Hey there, SMITE fans, and welcome in to the SPL Aggro, joined by Gormizer as we kick off Phase 2, Week number 4. And Gormizer, if you weren't watching Waiting Room, I know you were. I guess the you is kind of for the fans out there. Then you missed a lot of discussion on this first matchup because eUnited versus Obey, two 0-4 teams, both looking to find their first win.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. You know, it was one of those things, I was talking to you about this at the very beginning, but I try to keep track of it now, especially after Space Station had a really long win streak during Phase 1 of loss streaks, win streaks, etc., when teams have been able to win. For both of these teams, it hasn't happened this phase. It was Phase 1 that they were able to do it, so the 0-4, it's going to change today for somebody. And realistically, the way I see this set is not necessarily a turnaround or anything like that, as much as I like to equate it to kind of like a springboard in gymnastics, right? It's not going to do the work for you, but it's definitely your bouncing point. And I think if you can get a win here, you can start looking at the Renegades and the Knights in a different light.
I think so, too. I mean, don't forget, Renegades and Knights both only have one win apiece, so it really isn't completely over for either of these teams. Of course, it isn't because the phase is very long, but not even in terms of where they would be in the standings at the end of today, potentially, of course, pending the outcome of the Renegade set later on today as well. But I think the big thing here is just the mental damage that could be done by going 0-5 and being the last winless team in the SPL. Maybe getting a win doesn't do that much for you because you are still near the bottom, but I think the difference between getting that little bit of an edge from getting a win and the massive mental deficit you would go in by going to 0-5 makes this game very, very important for both teams.
And there's a lot, I think, that can be talked about throughout this. Both of the junglers, notably, in terms of their stats, their kills, are really the ones that are kind of driving factors for both of these teams. And honestly, that's just where it has to be. The duo lane for both sides, not necessarily as clean, so that's going to be a big point of contention. A lot of people like to kind of meme inbound lately with, you know, some of the ways the performance has gone. But right now, Snoopy is the one with the most deaths in the league here coming into Week 4 by about 12 on top of inbound. So you've still got something going on in terms of the supports and how the play is going. I expect maybe, honestly, a bloodbath over there in the left lane.
Yeah, there have been a lot of deaths over there for Snoopy, as he's tweeted. He's proud of that title. We'll see if he can hold on to it and hopefully get a win if you're an eUnited fan as we get ready for picks and bans for game number 1. A big thing for me, Gore, is that we've seen how this meta has evolved. We've seen how it changes picks and bans, and we've seen more Persephone in these few weeks than we did all of Phase 1. Now, she was also comp banned for part of that, I understand, but I think the sentiment remains the same. And Heroine has gotten Persephone recently, did not perform on it as much as they would have liked. So a pick to watch out for, I think, here for eUnited. As they start off with the Freya, it's still looking at those magical ADCs.
Yeah, she's in the top 4 in terms of bans in the league for the Persephone. But, you know, Freya, Oleron, Yamoja, Aphrodite, like these are the gods and goddesses that are standing right next to her in terms of potency. But I think it is that question, you know, especially for this matchup, again, the jungler being so important, as well as I think solo lane being important. I'm looking at your Cthulhu's, your Amaterasus that are banned out right there, as well as maybe, you know, some of these unorthodox junglers we've been seeing. Cyno kind of starting to shy away from those warriors, but maybe that's kind of an ace in the hole to have that, you know, kind of deeper god pool overall. We've seen Scream reaching down there as well. That, in my mind, are the two maybe driving factors in this. Mid lane is going to be a point of contention. I think both teams have a very solid mid laner around them so they can make plays, but it really is going to be, in my eyes, when that, you know, right-hand side, the short lane and the jungler start trying to impact everything else on the map, that's where the fate of the game will change.
Well, Amaterasu, Olorun, Persephone, and Cthulhu are banned, so no Persephone this time for Heroine, but that does leave open the Umoja, another one of those top 4 bans that you highlighted, and that likely will go to Snoopy. I don't think we'll see a Row Umoja solo special like we saw from Renegades earlier on this year. How do you feel about prioritizing this pick here for Snoopy? As you mentioned, a little bit inconsistent, has struggled a little bit in that support role. Do you think that there's value in getting him his first pick that's very strong, or do you think that that might be a trap here for eUnited?
Honestly, I actually think this is better for eUnited than what it's been, because a lot of the losses and a lot of the struggles Snoopy has had, we've been talking about it, the first couple of weeks. It was the support Cthulhu that eUnited were running that just didn't look good for Snoopy. I think getting him on something like Umoja, that, yeah, it still requires a high level of execution. We've seen what she can do, though, in the right hands, just when Ghost are playing her, when Radiant's play her, etc., etc. I think this is a good pick to just kind of get in there. It's not going to play herself, but as far as things go, it's not risky either.
Interesting. We were wondering how much more Achilles we would see after the buffs. Well, how's this for second pick here for eUnited? Variety, a long-time Achilles player, but don't forget that Scream also a lover of Achilles in the jungle, and those base damage changes on the 1 help him quite a bit there in that role as well. Something to watch out for as this draft develops. As Rom locked in for Guy J, I believe this was the pick that Guy J really popped off on last week and had his best performance yet in the SPL, but he's going up against one of the better Cupid players in SPL history. Wowie has loved this pick historically, and he's got it locked in already over there for Obey Alliance.
And clear-wise, I'm leaning Cupid Hercules just a little bit more. I think Umoja gives a lot of pressure if you're looking at that as a duo lane, but Hercules is known for being able to shut this down early. So I think eUnited, and maybe actually Obey, realistically, playing to their strengths here. They know that that's where eUnited are going to be weakest. If they can get a leg up over there, I mean, the early game for Obey these last couple of weeks has actually been pretty good compared to what we've seen, being able to keep close with SSG and the likes. So if you can turn that into a pretty large lead here against eUnited, then winning in the duo lane is going to make it a lot easier to start contending wherever Scream is, wherever you see these solo lane rotations come through, because you're not going to have to worry about these guys that you've shut down since minute 1.
A couple of magical gods taken off the board here by Obey in the form of Hebo and Cerberus. eUnited also in that mage tab looking at Poseidon to keep that out of Wolfie's hands, another pick that he has played a whole lot of in his SPL career. Jungler still potentially on the table for both teams, though I guess the Wukong and the Achilles both have flex potential into those roles, as Wolfie loses the Merlin, another god that he has played quite a bit of as of late. So now Obey Alliance is in the spot where do they want to save their counter matchup for either Wolfie or for Cyno? They answer pretty quickly, and that's leaving Cyno with the final pick.
Well, so far Obey, I mean, a lot of their top picks, some of them only picked twice, but like Ullr, Osiris, Amaterasu banned away from them. But a lot of these things that they've been relying on kind of tossed to the wayside here. And I honestly like that. This looks much more like a draft we would see maybe from your Ghosts, maybe from your Radiances, right? You can tweak around where they're going. With the Soul, maybe it feels a little more Renegades, because that's something Bear has been loving. But for the most part, it definitely feels fresh, and it's something that they were missing in week 1. It feels like they've taken that essence of this second phase so far in the updates they're playing in and started to pick it up. The problem is eUnited are maybe matching them on that with that Achilles, as you had highlighted, but now with a Morrigan Sobek in there, it just feels like it comes together very well. I think it's going to be tough for Obey to contend with this the longer the game goes on.
So it is going to be Achilles jungle there for Scream, and with that Sobek locked in, you got to imagine that's going to Variety, a notorious Croc player in that solo lane. And look at this final selection. That's why Obey wanted to save it for Cyno. It's the Awilix. But Gore, there aren't a whole lot of knockup or jumps on the other side, I should say. Umoja Riptide is the big one, and this has been a historic sort of counter pick against this Umoja, at least initially when she first came out. There is some knockups for Obey here as well. Ulting off Soul Ult is very, very difficult, and don't forget Cyno playing from the Midwest, western area. Colorado is where he resides, so that ping difference is going to make that pretty tough. But Hercules, Wukong, both providing some knockups as well. Do you like this final Awilix selection here for Obey?
I like her because I think it's something we've seen have success specifically against Umoja, like you highlighted, but there is that little flavor of change that has come through, right? Just slight buffs to her, base mana, MP5 for level, so she's going to be able to maybe stay in a fight a little bit better, a little bit more on that feather step as well, specifically in the early end, so you're going to be able to maybe get some clear a little bit faster, maybe more damage onto your mid laners. This is the kind of pick that you grab when you know your jungle is someone that has to carry for you, and I think eUnited can do this. I think this is going to be maybe do or die for Sino.
Well, let's see who can find their first win of phase number 2. eUnited and Obey squaring off. We got John Finch and the Savage on the call.
I am genuinely excited for this match. eUnited and Obey Alliance. Someone has got to get their first dub. And who is it going to be? I'm excited to know what you think as well, Chad. Make sure you're voting in the poll for us so we can see what you're thinking. But Hindu, we got to talk about this matchup here, man. I mean, and I think we could start with Sino on this wheel. As you heard them talk about some of the buffs that she got, the mana increase, the MP5 per level increase, Feather Step has a 10 per rank damage increase, and even Suku getting a little bit of love to that movement speed. Do you like this pickup here of the eUnited?
I do, and I think the big key there is some of the balance changes too coming into play. I mean, Feather Step with a bit more, better damage output, base stat increases on mana and MP5, which is one of the struggles that an eUnited can have. But realistically as well, look at the enemy team, look at the Riptide, something that Umoja brings and uses so effectively at the highest level of play. Being able to rip people through that Riptide away from it, force those beads, going to be very useful. But not only that, quite a few knockups on this team. Inbound, obviously, on the Hercules, but not only that, you've got Ducky, who can use the Ox form in a team fight to knock up multiple members. I think they've got good usefulness on that. I do want to touch real quick, Finch, for the fans at home who may notice that on Spectator right now, you can see the lighting's a little bit different. We made some changes as of late. So Spectator's a bit awkward right now. You're going to have to deal with it this weekend. It might look a little bit brighter than usual, but that's all you really need to know. It'll be returning to normal soon.
Yeah, it's looking brighter because our future is so bright at this moment here, Hindu. And I think I've got to agree with some of what you were talking about in terms of the knock-up viability here for Obey, because I think it is relatively consistent between the Ox form knock-up, between the Hercules, and then also between those Riptides over there for eUnited. So I think Sino's going to have some good opportunities. Plus, this gives him a pick that can get active relatively early. We sometimes see a eUnited get active with that Feather Step and is able to get off to a pretty good start because it is so much damage. But so far, it's been a little bit slow here for these two teams. Everyone kind of sticking to their own side of the map. And if we see that trend continue, a slower game here, well, maybe we won't. Guy J gets the beads forced out. But if things do stay slower here, Hindu man, which team are you favoring a bit more towards the mid game?
I think, honestly, it's going to come down to which two players stand out most. And when I say two players here, Finch, it's Sino versus Hurrywin in this game. Because Hurrywin on this Morrigan could be a big issue, but what can Sino do on the other side of things? When we get towards the mid-later stages, I'm leading a little bit, honestly, towards eUnited in terms of composition-wise, because they're going to have that Morrigan for that late-game power spike, plus a Rama too, which can be very impactful with just those basic swings away. And the Umoja too, for sure. I definitely lean eUnited's way, but I'm not sure that's all it's going to be cracked up to be. I think, really, what can they do about the Morrigan? And one thing I want to mention here is Ducky could lean towards a Mystical Mail this game. I think Mystical Mail is definitely an option for a mid to late game item to kind of shut down some of the invisibility options Hurrywin will have and trying to get towards the backline safely and cause the big outputs of damage there. But honestly, it's how the early game goes in the dual lane, first of all, and at the moment, it's going as expected. With Umoja in that lane, the pressure's going to be there early on.
I'm glad you bring up this duo lane here, Hindu, because these are both supports who have struggled so far in this phase, right? Inbound has had some struggles, I think, in his aggression and reining that in and not getting picked a lot early, and Snoopy has had some struggles, even on some really strong picks. So I think we could see a chance here for either one of these solo laners, potentially both, or support roles, rather, to try and start getting on track a little bit. Snoopy is on who I consider the best support right now in this Umoja, can really control games. We see PBM and Aurora do that all the time from this pick, and then you could see almost the same thing for inbound on this Hercules, certainly the best warrior support you can pick right now, who can also control the early to mid game. I think that both of them have a lot of control on how this match goes in their hands.
And I think a lot of that will also come down to the junglers again, Scream and Sino. Who's going to pressure that duo lane more? And I think the one to look out for is Sino looking towards duo a little bit more. It's easier to look for a pick there rather than ganking the Morrigan or a Sobek in solo lane. Good luck with that A, because it's Sobek, but good luck with it B, because it's variety on that Sobek too. He's not going to go down easy. I think Variety's got one of the best Sobeks in that solo lane. But I want to see how Ducky can do in this lane, honestly, because I want to see if he goes for the Soul Eater rush, which I expect in this matchup, and look to use that pressure early to make some quicker rotations where Sobek can flounder a little bit on clear.
Soul Eater's a great item right now, as it looks like Inbound trying to find the loop around. Really only Snoopy he can find. That's who he goes for. Uses the push and gets the beads. Snoopy, on support Yemoja, goes with beads early on. Not sure if it was 100% necessary there, but it does keep him healthier on this left-hand side. And perhaps worried that he'll be getting pulled a lot by this Awelish, maybe, is why he's picking up those beads.
Definitely, because he's the prime person who's got an escape that's a leap. He's the only one on the team. So when he uses that Riptide, there's a good chance they're going to try and shut him down. And one of the things to note here is just to see how they play around this now. Will we now see Sino in the next couple of minutes pressure dual lane, knowing Snoopy's beads are down? I would argue yes is the answer there now that the Inbound's done it. So I like the idea from Inbound. He goes straight back to base, picks up full boot, so he's got super mobility in that lane with the Talaria, heads to lane, ganks Snoopy, gets the beads, and now sets up the opportunity if Sino can find it for the return play. It's a good idea.
He'll have a little under 2 minutes to work with to make that happen. He's already got the ultimate, so I would not be surprised at all if Sino makes his way over there. Following along with this solo lane, because I agree with you that this could potentially be really impactful. Both a Sobek and a Wukong rotating out ahead in that mid to late game are pretty scary prospects, but I think I agree with you in terms of variety, not just Sobek, but I kind of like Variety's Guardian solo play in general, but especially on Sobek. It gives him so much control over the fights. It actually has decent damage potential too. He could be a real problem for Obey to deal with later.
Yeah, I completely agree, and how they're going to really deal with that Sobek is the question. It really is run away for the most part. The problem is that when Worry drops the ultimate down, Sobek can immediately lurk in the waters, right? So Cupid is kind of a non-factor to an extent about what Cupid can bring to the fight. And Sol's got no like self-peel to get away from Variety other than raw damage. So the backline carries if we see Variety focus on diving into the backline, which I expect alongside Scream, leaving Snoopy on the backside for protection and peel. I expect to see Variety running these carries and making their life a living hell. Not only that, some of the things that those two carries from Obey bring is a bit of sustain, and it's one thing Sobek's good at answering back to, with the fact that he can reduce the amount of healing people get.
Well, it's Scream who's showing presence in the duo lane first, and that means Wowie's stuck inside the River's Rebuke. Good Fields of Love will buy him some times, but the snipes are coming out from Guy J, and Scream close at the distance. It's eUnited that gets on the board first with first blood 6 minutes in.
Yeah, no wards on that left-hand side, spotting that rotation out was the big key for me. Two members of Obey were mid lane, and that just left that window open. Well, he's either too far up, or his team's not calling the situation so he can pull back there for me and my liking on that Obey game. Great play from eUnited, though, just recognizing that window. And you can already see the power of Riptide if you get the opportunity to use it.
Sino low in the middle lane, but able to make it out of there. And I think, speaking about the power of things we just saw, obviously Riptide's strong, but I'm wondering if we might even see Herwin turn into this Cupid a few times and give us the Fields of Love. If Wowie's behind, we probably won't, but I mean, I feel like as good as the Fields of Love is for Obey, aren't they a little bit susceptible to it as well? The Awelish could be in some trouble, Inbound even could be as the Herc. That might not be a bad target.
No, it's not. And funny enough, I think, you know, Hori's got a couple of decent options here this game. He's got an execute option if he needs it from Scream, but also he could potentially drop another, I've not really thought about this, but the Yemoja wall again. Can you imagine two of those in a team point? That's a lot of sustain. But not only that, you've got the other tail of it as well, which is the defensive attitude of a Morrigan. You turn into Rama, right, and go to the sky with the ultimate and just hide up there for a few seconds, let your team rotate back in. There's a lot of opportunities, I feel, with a Morrigan, and that's why she's probably the strongest god in the game, period. Just because she'll turn into the other 9 gods, but she's very difficult to play and some people can shut her down. It's really going to be about how they can peel for the backline here when Sun Wukong, Sino, and obviously this Hercules come knocking.
And you already talked about it earlier as Snoopy is going to get caught out here by Sino. That is the ultimate from Sino as well. He really wants this kill onto Snoopy. In comes Inbound to try and help lock it down, but they cannot get to Snoopy. This Yemoja is able to make her way out of there and Obey commit quite a bit. They do get the beads out from Snoopy, but they used blinks to ultimates and still didn't get any kills.
Yeah, a little bit unfortunate there. We saw Bobby towards the tail end blinking and look for the Earthbreaker early. I think if he just went for the driving strike, that would have been a confirmed kill. But it felt a little bit more flashy to me than what he was looking for the double, setup and the real kill potential. I think a driving strike would have done enough there to set up that kill. So a bit of a drop situation for Obey. I like the idea though. Get the beads again from Snoopy. Keep those on cooldown. And funny enough, keeping your supports on defensive relics for themselves, not utility relics for the team, is always a very effective tool.
You're right, it's a bit of a small win in and of itself that Snoopy has that as opposed to a shell or something like that, right? Or something a little bit more versatile for the whole team. But you also were bang on in that they are looking for Snoopy in the early game. He needed these beads now twice to get away from some aggression coming from Obey, and that's going to make life a lot harder for them. If they were banking on being able to punish this Yemoja before she got to minimization online, had that Omi regeneration, all that tankiness that she needs, then that window is quickly starting to close. Not that far from Gauntlet of Thebes is Snoopy.
No, he's not. I mean, there's a couple of things that ran through my head about maybe a Stone of Gaia could be good for her because she gets knocked around a little bit here or there if she's going to be a focal target. But then can she really make use of it if people go anti-heal, which they are doing with the Brawlers and Sino now? Like, she's already doing healing anyway, so it makes it trickier to go for a further return on health regen. But at the moment, eUnited getting aggressive here looking around this red buff.
They are. They recognize they have this left side pressure, so they can afford to step up. Red buff has spawned. Snoopy does get pulled, but no way to convert that into a push. Wolfie commits his ultimate. Now Wolfie is stuck inside the Yemoja ultimate. Snoopy locks him in, and Hurrowin shuts him down. That's the first kill going his way. Now Hurrowin, though, has to back off. Looks like he's used the ultimate to turn into the Wukong, perhaps, but not getting a whole lot of value there.
Yeah, comms on Robey there for me. I'm not sure why Wolfie... I mean, you've got Inbound to use the Earthbreaker and kind of watch. Sino was also waiting and watching. Sol comes around the corner, drops the ult to try and secure, but gets picked. Couldn't get the Disapparate off in time before the return damage came through. It really is a case there where Robey have to make a call of, are we contesting this to defend it, or are we giving it up? We can't do both, We can't dance around and choose one of those moments. It's got to be one or the other there. And I think that's just one of those things of like, if Bobby's not happy about the situation, call it off, Just call off the fight and say, listen, I missed my Earthbreaker, let's get out. If that misses, we get out of that fight and we give up the red buff, instead of losing the red and also losing elsewhere.
And it's tough. I mean, positioning as a backliner is tough. It does not take a whole lot for you to suddenly be the one that's out of position, and that's almost exactly what happened, right? Wolfie was taking his normal pathing up from mid lane, but because Bobby fell back sort of between Tier 1, Tier 2, Wolfie ends up getting isolated by Yemoja. That's also something that Yemoja uniquely is able to do by very quickly isolating a mid laner, but that is the task that's before Obey right now, is dealing with this Yemoja, is making sure that Wolfie, on one of the safest gods in the game, doesn't get picked. And unfortunately there for Obey, they make an unfortunate early mistake. Still, though, not down too much Hindu, only about 2,000 gold, a little bit less than that is the lead for eUnited here at this point. The experience differential's right around that same mark, a bit more. So Obey are certainly still within striking distance.
Sure, and I think the big key about the early game, we've noticed the games go around 20 to 30 minutes on average every single time, right? Mainly towards 30. The early game, you can get a lead, but we've seen plenty of that this year where teams can turn it around to the mid game. Some of the best teams in the league are great at doing that, for example, where they pick things up out of the early game, just holding their own through that stage. But it does give it a bit of a hit to confidence now and again, If things don't start going your way to begin with, and it gets worse, there's problems.
Sino has already been put in a little bit of trouble, forced out after taking some damage. That's the red buff invaded now twice in a row for eUnited, and they have found an area, a bit of a weakness in this composition for Obey, and it starts with Guy J having all this pressure on the left side of the map. That's twice now that Hurwitz has turned into the Wukong. It looks like if eUnited are going to fight, they want this Wukong on their side for Hurwitz.
Well, I mean, he's a nice tanky target. He's got an ultimate to regen his health back up if he gets low. He can frontline effectively. And I think Wukong, I mean, just as a god himself, that passive adjustment that he had this year, where he gets it a little bit earlier and a little bit more often for longer, is very, very impactful at swinging away and dealing damage. And like I said, you could dive all the way in if you wanted to, Horrorwind, and then still get out using the Somersault Cloud back to safety. I think it's a good option for him, especially for potentially re-aggressing or defensive option. It's a good mixture of both, I guess, is the best way I'm looking at that.
Yeah, and especially if variety isn't there, I think it provides some nice control in the fights as well. He can flexibly do the Tiger Stun, do the knock-up for them if they need to, and as you said, he has that get-out-of-jail-free card. I think that it does provide some options, especially before variety gets there. I wonder if we'll see, when it's the full 5-on-5, Hurwin switch those, and that's more of a thing to sort of elevate their 3v3. Very interested to hear from Hurry about the decision there.
Completely agree, and I think in the early game it's the right idea to go with the Sun Wukong at this level. The solo is expected to be ahead, so why not pick that solo laner to use that advantage in those fights? However, when the game goes on, do you want to switch that up maybe? If they've gone for a tankier build, or they've not got the levels you'd expect, going for one of the carry options or a different option is definitely on the table. And that's why I was saying Morrigan will always be the best god in the game, whether you like it or not, because she's got the ability to be every other god in the game.
Yeah, it's not a particularly fun answer, but I suppose it is quite true that it's hard to match the options that this Morgan pick can give you. Another red buff invade is in the cards here for eUnited, as Obey are here in present. Everyone except the solo laners are involved here in this fight. Waiting around the wall, though, is eUnited. Can't quite make it in, and Obey show up in strong enough numbers this time to keep eUnited at bay. So we'll get right back towards parity. No big fight happening at all. But there's the pluck. Ducky's been pulled, but that's a Wukong, not in a whole lot of danger.
A little bit worried, though, from what happened there, because of 4 members going from Obey. They waited for so long there, Finch.
They did, as we'll have a brief pause. Give us a moment to work on it. We'll be getting the players right back into the action. But I do think, Hindu, this is sort of a good time for us to talk a little bit about the current state of the game, because things are actually still very even. I know that eUnited's gotten a couple kills. They got themselves a small 2K lead or something like that, but it's really not that far out of reach for Obey at all at this point.
No, not at all. I think this is still a pretty even game between the two. That Obey invade, though, that on the red buff again at that tail end, I was mentioning there, a couple of invades in a row. They lose Wolfie on one of the invades, then they send 4 members in. But to do that, they lose a lot of pressure in the laning side as well. Both the mid and the duo lane ended up leaving their waves to come and defend, which means that they're not getting pressure in the lane soon after. So then when they get back to lane, there's gank potential there again. There's other buffs that can be invaded on. It's a tricky task for Obey. I know they sent a lot of members there and it works out well, but if eUnited starts to recognize that, you'll see those towers on that tier 1 and left and tier 1 and mid will get chipped away at even quicker.
And that is just the inherent advantage of being in the lead when you press the lead, because then your opponents have to make the decision between trying to farm to close the gap or trying to defend farm that might be stolen from them. It's an almost impossible to answer question if the team that is in the lead is pressing that lead correctly, and I think that's exactly what you're highlighting there, Hindu, and it's eUnited doing a good job of playing from ahead, but they're really just not all that far ahead, all things considered. They really want to be able to get the red buff invade more than anything right now, and that time Obey were able to answer.
Really interested by seeing so many of these toxic blades in the mid lane on so many different gods just lately. And I guess not just in the mid lane too. We've seen it a little bit more in the jungle from some people that I wouldn't expect either. And that toxic blade, it fits into the build nicely, you know. It's important for the anti-heal, I guess. You've got Scream, Variety, and of course Snoopy, who all have sustain in their kit. It makes sense to look for that option, but does it come at a cost, I guess, is the real question. And with someone like Sol, who's very much, in my opinion, auto-attack focused, it plays into her strengths pretty effectively here. I do like that pickup, but it's definitely one that a lot of people question now and again.
30% attack speed's great. It's still got the penetration on it too. I think I might be willing to come more around on this, as Variety does get a little bit committed to Wolfie.
That's a good win.
Dropping the ultimate. Looks like Sino ulted too. Were they planning on knocking him up and pulling him in? But Variety heads up, uses his own ultimate. You talked about this earlier, all that safety that the Sobek has, and now Obey are able to come around and grab the Pyro, even though they couldn't get that pick on the Variety.
That was a really good play from Obey, honestly. I mean, they get a Pyro, and now they might be able to defend this on the left-hand side. It is only inbound on his own, though, so this might cost him big, unless big old driving strike. He needs to hit this.
Or maybe the boulder. I imagine that's what he'll be trying to rely on, but it's eUnited that are able to secure the objective. Now inbound is stuck near 3 members, and he didn't even get the bounty. There's the execute from Scream, and suddenly 3 kills on the board for eUnited in total across the whole game. They might even be able to find another as Wolfie gets locked down in mid, but Disapparate, such a strong tool, and Wolfie able to make it out of there.
They were fine with sacrificing Bobby there. I understand Obey's thought process. Realistically, I don't think they're happy with trying to take a fight when they just used, as you said, Sino and Wolfie's ultimate to try and pick on Variety there and get that all out. So they realized their team fight around Gold Fury wasn't going to be strong. So instead, they take the Pyro and surrender the Gold Fury and hope for Bobby to make a play. But now Sino's caught.
Yeah, but he still is on Suku, so should have the option to get out of there unless Scream does exactly that much damage. Saito ends up dropping it up 4th now for eUnited. But as you already covered, Pyromancer and Gold are down. These picks not quite as valuable unless you just force down towers. eUnited group up, force down the tier 1, and look where Scream is way in the back near the enemy Gold, or
he's gonna die there.
Buff, able to reposition. There's a big knockup, and I don't know, Hindu, he's got a ton of backup now. Maybe they can take this fight after all. Wolfie has to leave. Ducky way on the top side of the fight, still looking for damage, but Scream on the bottom is in trouble. They've broken off from him and aren't providing any support.
Really risky for poor old Wolfie in mid lane there, just left on his own, being run down by 2. But, you know, the front line does their job and manages to kill Scream. It took way longer than it should have, though. Great backup from eUnited, in my opinion. But Obey, really a little bit awkward there. And now we got to fight on left, and Wowie could be in trouble.
Gets out of that ultimate, though, able to reposition with the dash, has to stop short because of that stun coming through, but it's Bobby who's able to find the pull. Variety, though, able to make out of that without any problem. So we should be back towards a little bit of neutrality here, Hindu. Still a small lead there for eUnited, but the later this game goes, the less that their 2K gold lead means.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the 2K Gold, when you think about it, it's kind of gone up and down. Pyro for Gold Fury. Tier 1 tower being down in mid lane, though. Asino's in trouble.
Yeah, if you're wondering how much damage Whirlwind does, it's a lot. And it transforms into the Achilles just for the execute. Doesn't get it, but Variety is there to clean up.
Yeah, take into account as well, we mentioned a little bit on the waiting room show earlier, Finch, the buff to Achilles. I mean, that first ability swings a little bit harder now. It may not feel it at first, but take into account there's drop-off on that ability as well, in terms of like the tail end of the damage at the tip top is actually reduced to about 85% of that. So when you think of 100, it'll be 85%, that's so 85 damage. But at 320 overall, with the damage numbers going up, it's definitely swinging a little bit stronger than it used to. And I was interested to see if people would adjust to that and be aware of how much extra damage that will do. Not only that, he is building Soul Eater.
That's right. It's going to make things pretty difficult when he's getting the sustain from it, and he still is getting a lot of the other stats that he needs. But I'm still impressed by just the base Morrigan damage that we saw there as well. Whirlwind is an absolute nightmare, and you talked about this way back at the beginning of the game, that I think that to really get the maximum Morrigan value, you need to get damage out of her base mage abilities first, and then the transformation. And if something like a Mystical Mail came out, broke that stealth, it would be harder, but Whirlwind so far is getting all of that value.
Yeah, I noticed Whirlwind's build here too, by the way, going for the Doom, or pretty classic on the Morrigan. You don't see on every god in the Pro League playing mid, but on Morrigan specifically, movement speed is king. The more you can move during your stealth ability and get around the map, the more impactful you're going to be in these fights. The safer you're going to be, the more aggressive you're going to be. Mobility is a big factor on a Morrigan, so just keep an eye and expect to see mobile abilities every now and again. Doom Mob being the key one for this here.
Red buff being invaded again. We're 20 minutes into the game, and yet another big fight will be happening here. This time, though, all 10 members of Presence. Bobby uses the blink to get in for the push, drops the boulder inside the River's Rebuke, but he was not ready to go swimming just yet. Snoopy gets the kill credit there. Ducky has to take to the sky right away because Guy J is starting to swing at this point in the game. There's the snipes as well, as Sino has to disengage the rookie. Playing pretty well here so far for eUnited, as Wowie pops the frenzy. He knows they got to make a defense. Fields of Love guarantees the death onto Variety that Ducky is able to find, but Ducky doesn't have the ultimate anymore, but cannot use the Fatal Strike. Can Scream to get into the tower, has to retreat. It ends up being a 1-for-1 solo for support.
But look at the health bars and look at the position eUnited are in here too. Sure, Obey have built anti-heal, credit where it's due. But eUnited are healthy enough to be able to go and strip the jungle still. They take the red buff, they take the purple. That tier 1 town on the left is available, and Gold Fury's coming up again soon too. Great little win there for eUnited, and that's going to probably catapult the lead a little bit more so after that 1-for-1 trade in the jungle yet again. Obey are a little bit lost, I would say. Inbound engagement there, I like the idea behind it, but the team were in position to follow up was the biggest key for me. Whirlwind didn't even have beads when he hit that driving strike, but no one was there to follow up with damage because they couldn't get in range in time. The angles and the map position was very awkward, but that Fury is huge for Obey.
That is, Obey are the ones that took the full reset so they could step up to the Fury. eUnited stuck around relatively healthy, but they did not fully reset. That's an easy one for Obey to take, even with that ultimate there from Snoopy. And now, remember that small gold lead we were talking about earlier, Hindu? Well, that is starting to shrink even more. They got to make sure that they're in position for these neutral objective fights the way that Obey was just now.
mentioned it a few times, Fish, through the years. I mean, really, it comes down to, in SMITE, who makes the most mistakes. But not only who makes the most mistakes, it's who makes the most mistakes and they get capitalized on by the enemy team. That was a drop ball from eUnited for me, and Obey capitalized on it beautifully, and they nearly get a little cheeky pyro there at the tail end.
Ducky very close with that cudgel, but not quite able to grab it. But we are into Fire Giant dance territory of this game, it feels like now. The vision control around it is controlled by Obey. They've got a sentry on the actual pit, a sentry over near the mid lane as well. They've got good vision control around this area, but they're starting to spread back out as well. Wowie all the way over in the left lane. It might be a while before we actually do see this big Fire Giant stance happening. And I'm not too surprised, Hideo, that this game is being played a little bit slowly. We're not building this game up for no reason. I think both of these teams consider this a very important set as well.
Agreed, and I think this is a really close game between two teams that are in a very similar position with how their year's gone so far. I don't think there's any stretch to say that. I mean, it shows with the performances they've had so far where their issues have been. And one of these teams is going to be the bottom of the league, and it's going to be a little bit clearer for a minute until we see them play again. If either one can get away, Inbound's just getting ripped apart here, bit by bit.
Yeah. And he gets picked off yet again, Inbound, too far from the rest of the team, and United willing to commit to kill him. There's the ultimate from Sino, used just as a stim, and it gets him next to nothing. In trouble at the back of the fight, and Guy J hits the snipe, so it's 2 for 0 in favor of eUnited. The remaining members of Obey Alliance now trying to figure out how they can reposition. Up into the somersault cloud goes Ducky, but it's full retreat mode. eUnited won this fight front to back, and now they can head over towards FG.
But you can see United's thought process in these fights too. They're killing the Hercules first, and then secondary, if Hercules isn't around, it's Sino. Take those two out, and this team kind of folds and can't really do much. It's not to discredit the other three, it's just like, what can Ducky really do to try and engage and deal with 5 members, right? The rest of his team can't step up. This Fire Giant, though, this is the time Obey have to get back into this, but can they do it is the question. Ducky looks like he's just going to go for a Jingu Bang here, which is a really, really tricky task to try and secure with just that.
Not the easiest thing in the world. We're sub 2,000 HP at this point. Cudgel a little bit too early, and eUnited secure the objective. Cripple shot does not come through, so Ducky able to keep right on moving. They don't get the charge prey either, so Ducky lives in a scenario where he very certainly should have died. Good peel from Inbound coming out as well, and Ducky will eventually get cleaned up. That really makes, if you count that last fight, a 3 for 0 plus the FG for eUnited.
Yeah, and then everyone from United's going to be able to base potentially here. Yeah, Inbound and Wolfie can't really catch them now. That was a kind of strange play. I get Ducky's mentality of just trying to Jingu Bang for the steal, but the other option there really is just get in the pit and disrupt for a second, if that's the idea behind it, because you're probably going to die going for a cheeky steal anyway. He did get back to his tower, granted, but maybe if he goes in, you know, causes a bit of attention to be drawn to him, FG takes a little bit longer, does a bit more damage to them, gives a window for Sol maybe. I don't know, it's a tough call to make there on that one, but at the end of the day, love Guy J, who immediately recognized after getting FG, roll on Ducky, get that pick, because then it turns into a tower as well.
He's played well. I've been impressed with how Guy J has looked so far, and just from doing that eUnited team check-in, you know, you should check those out on our YouTube, on the SMITE Pro YouTube. It's clearly a guy that's coming in humble but hungry to try and prove himself. Guy J is, and he's playing well here in what is their most important set of the phase so far. Certainly there'll be more important ones down the line, and that's a good sign, I think, for eUnited going forward. They need this guy to recognize when he can step on the gas. That's hard to teach to these Hunter players when they're at their strongest, when they should be aggressive, and it looks like Guy J understands.
Yeah, credit where it's due as well to Snoopy this game too on this Yemoja. I think he's had a really good game. Yep. He realized that he was going to be an attention point for Obey this, especially with the Awelix pick, because that kind of telegraphs it for me. When you look at the comp that United have drafted, no leaps, and the Awelix comes through, they were really trying to hunt Snoopy early on. And even Inbound's play, when you looked at the dual lane in his early game, his blinks, his aggression, was all focused towards Snoopy. So Snoopy realizing that and adjusting to play a little bit more defensively and be like, okay, I'll go beads, you know, I'll let you focus me, my job is to survive, and has done so all game so far, not to cast his curse him, but I think that's made a big impact in allowing eUnited to play to what they wanted to do this game.
Inbound, walking in aggressively once more. Not able to find the pull, but he does push Snoopy back towards the enemy team. Not a very good Rivers Rebuke this time, and he's locked inside the field of love, but Snoopy lives through all of it. So many ultimates committed to try and get the kill, and yet Snoopy still stands. Inbound has already fallen. Wowie right behind him. Guy J can't find the last few shots, so Sino is still alive as he retreats back towards the mid-Phoenix, but Wolfie falls. Hurwind catches up for his own double, a 4-for-0, and honestly, that should just be it. eUnited able to put a pretty confident stamp on this very first game.
Yeah, a bit of an unfortunate tail events there from Obey, because I think in the early game we were both like, hey, they've got a fair shot at this, but eUnited did not let off the gas. Very few mistakes out of eUnited this game. I think from eUnited's point of view, that Gold Fury mistake of dropping that gave a bit of a window for Obey. Some of the decision making as like a team to go for objectives from Obey this first game was good, but trying to defend buffs and the composition hasn't worked out for themselves. eUnited, good performance.
And they seem to be struggling to initiate fights from what I could see there, Hindu. Obey at the very least. Too often, it felt like the initiation was Bobby or Sino just kind of walking at the other team, and Bobby takes a whole bunch of damage on the way in, or Sino has to use his ultimate just as a stem to make it in. It was not quite enough value, I don't think, coming out from them. That's why they had the most deaths. Those were the two trying to initiate, and there was no easy way to do it.
No, I didn't even really feel like the side lanes managed to get involved from Obey in that game. I mean, Cupid was very quiet, but also Sun Wukong, I mean, he couldn't really do a whole lot there, Ducky. He was trying to frontline, but by the time he got to those engagements, by the time he got to those engagements, they were kind of already over anyway, and what does he get left to do? Jingu bang at an FG and hope for the best.
Didn't really end up panning out for them there in that first game, and that is not a great sign for Obey, because as you mentioned, I mean, they were kind of close in the early, but certainly never doing anything that affirmatively felt like we were moving towards an Obey win. Something they're going to have to clean up here in Game 2 as we get it back down to the desk.
eUnited take Game 1 convincingly up against Obey Alliance, and Gore, I find myself agreeing with what Finch was saying at the very end there. The engage potential for Obey felt very one-dimensional. Let's knock up a frontliner and then pull them in. And eUnited went, okay, we have a Sobek who's impossible to kill off a pull, and our Umoja has beats, so what are you going to do about it? And Obey just kind of didn't do anything about it for 27 minutes.
Yeah, just kind of gave them the good luck with that. You guys do whatever you want. We've got, like you said, Umoja, we've got Sobek, we've got carries that are accomplishing a lot. This Achilles, I think, made a huge difference for them as well. And unfortunately, I just think there was a lot of moments where maybe Obey could have tried to make a play, and it just never really got to come to fruition, right? And I think it is just that counterplay that eUnited had coming forward with them. It almost got to the point where, we saw the game ending, and I was like, oh, it's over. Like, it just didn't occur to me that it would be, I guess, not even that quick. I mean, you said 27 minutes, but it felt much slower paced. eUnited definitely recognized that they had control of it, and they never let it slip for a second.
It didn't feel like Obey was in the lead at all in this game, and I do think they deserve some credit. Despite repeated red buff invades, they weren't down by that much, but not being down by that much is not how you win games the vast majority of the time. You've got to be the ones pushing the pace. Certainly, Hurwin deserves a ton of credit. I thought he had a fantastic Morrigan game this time around. 3-0-9 for him. Believe he finished top of the player damage charts. And it's gotten to the point for me, Gore, where when you're looking at this eUnited squad, if they don't top 3 this ROM, I think you've got to ban it from Guy J. He has looked so much better on this pick in comparison to every other hunter he's played.
I mean, really, really good damage on it. Obviously, maybe overshadowed there by the 6-1 and 6 from Scream, but it's that noticeable difference when you have Hurwind on something that not only is a top pick, but seems to be making strides here in this Morrigan. Even though, I love his Yanis, I think being able to find something meta there, get Guy J on this ROM where he's very comfortable, it definitely makes this team look different. I was talking earlier, before we got into that game, about the duo lane. We were questioning, man, you're first picking Snoopy Umoja. Like, is this the call overall? I mean, you don't want to focus on Scream. And at the end of the day, that duo lane ended up doing exactly what they needed to, which was control down. They made an easier decision. The start for he was the really big in the late game. By the time he started rotating into the fights, it almost felt like it was too late for Obey.
Gorbizer, you can't help yourself, can you? He's using the B Cupid skin, and the emphasis on B, not lost, nicely done, my friend. As always, got to give you credit. But Obey, I think, does have to go back to the drawing board. Overall, I mean, the way that Inbound played that Hercules, just was not inspiring. Just had a really, really tough game on that mechanically. And that's a difficult position to be in, because when you pick a god like that and then you aren't able to actually capitalize on it, you're going to end up losing a lot of threat in the picks and bans. And I think that's a problem that could plague Obey here in game 2.
And that was something I think Snoopy did really well, which was kind of sidewinding and keeping track of this Hercules and making sure that it couldn't really get to the point where we see, you know, the likes of your Polar Bear Michaels and your Auroras in terms of control, right? It was never really allowed to get off that mark. And there were also some times where maybe it just missed, and honestly, if you miss the knockup, you're at that point like, cool, what do I do now? Well, I walk back, wait for the cooldown, and hope I can do it next time. And I think that really helped facilitate eUnited getting even further ahead. And then, of course, once Achilles started to get on a roll, there were a couple of times where it felt shaky, but never enough that it felt like Scream was going to lose anything out of it.
Well, let's see what adjustments Obey chooses to make here in game number 2 of their set up against eUnited. Now eUnited just one game away from finding their first win here in phase number 2, and this time around it's going to be Obey in that first pick position. If they want to repeat history and go with the exact same style of bans, that would leave Inbound on the Umoja this time, though I don't really recall him playing a whole lot of that character as of late. Not sure if that's a real priority pick for Obey. So maybe we'll see a bit of a switch up when it comes to the bans.
Yeah, it's weird. Their top pick going into this week was Ymir, of all things, so maybe not exactly where you expect to see Inbound going. I'm wondering if they're going to grab something like that in a matchup like this. It feels like they have been gravitating away from it, though, especially right now. The meta, it feels much more comfortable if you're bringing some warriors over in there. That's obviously where Hercules is coming from, but even, you know, Sanguine bringing in the Mulan support and making it look really good. I think there's a lot of flexibility in support. You just have to be very comfortable to do it. The problem is that comfort, it comes at a cost, because you aren't going to be as tanky early on. You maybe are sacrificing, you know, the wide variety of CC for one very specific form of CC or some form of healing that comes through with the Horus. There's a lot of potential play over there. I'm wondering if Obey are going to maybe explore that route, or if they're going to keep falling back to these other comfort picks.
So Aphrodite and Persephone taken out of Heroine's hands here by Obey as we are waiting on their final ban. It is going to be a Umoja ban from eUnited, interestingly enough, so they are a little bit scared of handing that over towards the Obey Alliance side, alongside the Freya, as we expected. Olorun still open. That's exactly where my mind was going. Obey's going to take that off the table. And now you're looking at Cthulhu and Amaterasu.
Yeah.
At this rate, Ducky will get a priority solo laner if eUnited let him, and they will, but it looks like they're willing to make a trade in that category. They ban the Nemesis instead. But Nem kind of means that the Cthulhu gets even better here, Gore. I'd expect Obey to go that route.
Yeah, if they pick it up here, like you said, with the Nemesis gone, the protection shred, the ability to kill him incredibly fast starts to disappear. I think we saw Ghost picking up like a Sunder, things like that, to try and help burn this Cthulhu down a little bit faster. There's definitely still ways to deal with him. It just makes life a little harder for yourself, but at the same time, you're taking that shot at Cyno, and I love Ducky. There's a lot that Ducky can do, but carrying 4 other members of Obey is going to be difficult, even with one of the best solo laners in the game. So I think this is something that, you know, he's got a lot of work cut out for him, even if it is one of the higher priorities. You get this Achilles. I wouldn't mind seeing Amaterasu here for United as well, just to make sure you have one of those top picks available, considering I think Obey, honestly, if they wanted, Cyno might be able to run it in the jungle.
So it is going to be the Hercules alongside that Achilles. Want to keep that flexibility of the Warrior of Achilles for the jungle for Scream again, or for variety in that solo lane in the one-on-one matchup up against the Cthulhu. And right back to the Cupid goes Wowie. And as you said, I think he had a little bit of trouble staying relevant in that game with how many red buffs were invaded and how many times that eUnited was able to get pressure on that left-hand side. And now Obey, maybe you try and go with something here for Inbound, could go back to that Ymir, as you highlighted, being their #1 overall pick, but instead it's going to be the physical version of a high-pressure Guardian, and that's in that Horus, like you mentioned.
I really like Horus here. I think Cupid Horus sound like, to me it just sounds like a very difficult to kill lane, which honestly might be what they need over there, right? A lot of healing in the hearts and in Horus's dash, a good set of stuns that can come through or mezzes that can come through, and with Horus being able to strip protections away, can make that Hercules a little more dangerous because you want to get aggressive as Hercules. You want to walk forward and knock him up, but if you walk forward right into a dash that then stuns you and shreds your protections, Cupid could theoretically heart bomb you, get a lot of snowball potential off of that, and maybe find a kill on it. So I think this is a good counterplay to at least try to handle Hercules. That being said, if Horus is the one getting knocked up, you're not then in a good position anymore. You have to dash back and get out of there. At worst case scenario to me, it feels like it just stays alive, which sometimes that's all you need.
Well, now there's the ROM for Guy J, like we expected before the second ban phase. He continues to go to that pick and has continued to look pretty good on it. We'll see if he's able to keep that going here in game number 2. Is Obey going to make sure that Heroin does not get to bottom 2 the Morrigan this time around? The smart ban by them with how potent he was on that pick in game number 1. eUnited again going to the Poseidon. I'd anticipate probably going to the Merlin again. Indeed they do. That soul for Wolfie did not feel particularly impactful in that game 1.
Yeah, I didn't really get to come to any position where we were like, yes, the soul feels like the significant threat right now. Pretty much the entire time it was Ducky's Wukong, which honestly makes me kind of rethink what I was saying earlier about the Cthulhu. The Wukong for Ducky was doing a lot of what we want to see out of a solo laner, but he started doing a lot earlier on. Cthulhu maybe be the one to help turn that around in their favor, maybe make it a little bit more of an impact from that. But again, it just feels like such a heavy impact from only 2 players that you're getting to see on Obey, at least through the duration of last game, that I think, hopefully, as long as this Cupid Horus lane goes kind of to note, stays alive at best, then you're fine. But this is just looking pretty devastating. I mean, 3 warriors, granted, they're all going to build very and vastly differently, but I think all of what eUnited here, this 4 physical, is not going to feel good for Obey. It's going to be a lot of setup potential, a lot of control.
Interesting. The first time we've seen Ra here in phase number 2. I've not seen a lot of him in phase number 1 either. Remember, he got a buff a while ago to give more power in that Solar Blessing. I feel like he's pretty strong alongside the Erlong Shen, a classic combo. This is a setup comp for Wolfie and Wowie on this Ra and the Cupid. I like the way that Obey's composition looks here, Gore. Great CC, a little bit single target potentially because of the Horus, but the question is, do they have enough damage in order to kill these 3 warriors? And eUnited going with the Baba Yaga, or when Heroin plays it, the Haba Yaga, or the Haba Haga is how you usually do it. Gore, a little bit more late game there in the mid lane. I don't know, though. I mean, I feel like the Baba is a ton of late game damage, and eUnited's got these 3 warriors to kind of get them there in the early stages. Frankly, I like both comps quite a bit.
I really like both of them. I think eUnited, though, specifically now with the Baba Yaga there, you need that late game, right? You're waiting for Heroin to come online and for this ROM to come online, because I'm looking at a Cthulhu with a Ra heal, a Horus heal, a Cupid Hearts if he needs to stay in the game. That's going to be virtually impossible to kill. Erlong Shen has his own form of self-sustain. I think what Obey have is not only screaming anti-heal to me for eUnited, but it's also just kind of trying to live out the fights, right? They died too fast this last game in the first one, so now it's how do we survive these engagements so that we can retaliate, jump back in, re-engage, and it's through all of this out-of-combat healing. But I'm thinking Cursed Onks, I'm thinking Pestilence, I'm thinking Contagion, I'm thinking any form of anti-heal you can get in the game. It's going to make it a lot harder for the Ra, for the Cupid, for the Horus to survive.
eUnited looking to close out their first set victory of phase number 2. We'll see if they can do it with John Finch and Hindu Man.
Thanks, Aggro and Gore on the desk. We move into game number 2 with Obey having struggled in game 1. And Hindu, from where I'm sitting, I kind of feel like Obey are putting a lot of pressure on Wolfie. But this composition, they have a ton of setup. Stuns, roots, knockups, taunts, it's all there. But if this Ra's not hitting snipes and his celestial beams, then it's all for nothing.
I can agree with that for sure, because when you look at eUnited's composition here, it is the W key composition. right?
Oh,
Like,
they're gonna be
all of
running
them
at
want
it,
to
yeah.
be in melee range. Variety, Scream, Snoopy, all three of them are going to run you down in W key right at Wolfie. Like, that's a prime target, prime real estate as a Ra for those three. But not only that, you're going to have a Hurrywin whose distance isn't the greatest, if I'm honest. He's going to be like a mid-distance to stay in range to get his abilities off. So it's going to be a lot of pressure on the W key comp of eUnited, where, look at Obey though. I think they're very good at spacing these fights out. Ra does have good mobility. You've got Sino for these cripple routes that can cause some problems with those pins. And then you've got Ducky, where if they're going to group up, Ducky's like, okay, cool, I'm Cthulhu. I do like both compositions here, if I'm honest. I think it plays to both strengths of both teams here, and I'm excited to see how this one goes out down.
I agree. I always like getting a chance to watch how Irwin plays this Baba Yaga in particular,
Yeah.
because he plays it so stacking heavy to try and fully utilize her passive, where she's able to just kind of by being near the house that follows her around, get those stacks built up. I think we might even see him do Book and something like a Warlock staff. He likes to go both. But it should be interesting on both sides. I mean, last game I thought the supports were going to be huge because we saw the Hercules and the Yamocha playing into each other. But this time, I don't know, maybe it's the solo laners. I mean, Cthulhu and Amma, that's always a battle now. It's the solo lane matchup, so whichever one of those are more impactful is going to be big.
Sino's still getting aggressive there against two. I like the pressure he's trying to put out. He knows in the early game, Baba Yaga ain't the greatest through the early stages, if I'm honest. Wave clear's a little bit lackluster, even though it scales just about the same, if not the same base damage of those major abilities, but it does definitely feel a little bit more lackluster. I love the idea of using this Erlang early to try and get a lead for the team.
Snoopy doesn't have a whole lot of backup, is now moving towards Scream and Heroin, who are nearby, but look at this. Red buff invade. United know what they want. He does make it all the way to Wolfie. Scream, that is, but the peel is there. Inbound does a great job knocking Scream up. He
Sino
got
went
too
back
much damage, and Sino is able to find first blood for Obey. Now United have to go running for the hills. Red buff invade rejected.
And this is one thing that I was excited about today in this set specifically. I am really happy to see Inbound playing Horus, because I believe Horus is Bobby's wheelhouse of exactly what he likes to do. Bobby likes to be aggressive. He loves to go in deep and play really high up the match, but because of that, he can get himself caught out of position. I think the fact that he's got that protective surge to jump towards a teammate will allow him to get to engagements quicker for setup and peel, which is what happened towards Wolfie there in that engagement, by the way. But not only that, he can go deep and reposition if he overextends. I expect to see more Horus Bobby as the season continues, dependent on how well he can play at this game.
Hopefully so, because I think that's the problem for not just Bobby, but Snoopy as well. It feels like to me, both of these support players have not yet found their groove. And it makes sense, right? Snoopy is not really a support player. I mean, he's kind of made that transition because that's what United thought was best. And Bobby is making the transition to doing it at the SPL level, day in and day out. One of the best on console, it's hard to argue. Every team he was on was routinely successful. It's just that neither one of them have really found their footing. So I think a big part of that is going to be finding which gods they can consistently play well. And they're still working on that. So maybe this Horus can be that as Inbound moves in to try and look for this invade.
And the invade's looking pretty good for them too, honestly. Like, trying to keep the pressure going and re-sustain back up using Cupid, and of course the Horus heal too. They don't get the buff though, unfortunately, but I do like the method to the madness there. And you're completely right, because when you look at these two support players in general, I think Snoopy's biggest issue is his adjustment to playing aggressive gods versus playing backline. I think Snoopy's going to find a bit more fun in the long run by sitting back and playing some more supportive gods, because I think he's been in that role quite considerably, playing a hunter role for the most of his career. You know, you kind of sit in the back line and judge the situation well. You can do very similar things like a Yamoja in the support role, whereas Bobby, meanwhile, he's all about the W key. He likes the aggressive style, and I think the aggressive style can play benefits for you in the meta we're in right now. But if you don't manage to adjust to the pro level of play and adjust to the fact that sometimes if you do just W key, people will punish you for that, that's where he's finding a bit of frustration, a couple of issues there. So it's really going to be about map knowledge more than anything else, of keeping an eye on the minimap, but also choosing when to engage and when not to, not just because your ability is available.
Going to need to be an adjustment period for both of them. Obey have a slight lead here off that first blood they were able to get for Sino. And I think it's a good point to sort of talk about how we have seen Obey play with a lead, because I think to their credit, they've actually had a lead in a good number of games, right? They've been able to get off to a decent start, get Sino ahead, and find themselves somewhere from 2,000 to that 4,000 gold lead in the early to mid game. But what they really struggle with is converting those leads into wins, obviously, because they don't have any, but they've been there before where they they've been close. Not like this. Obviously, we're not there yet, but certainly a good conversation.
No, completely agree. And I think that's the biggest thing about them, honestly, is that people aren't factoring in their early game has improved. It shows that this camaraderie, this team they put together, is there as a unit, and they're improving at the early game. But when they get to the mid and the later stages, it's kind of like they have a bit of a nosebleed where they're like, wait, we're in the lead, what do we do? And they get a little bit lost and disjointed. And the problem is that people don't really remember how good the early game went if you run a loss. You know, you get a loss, it's over. Here comes a gank, though.
Variety is able to make it back to the tower, but there's the root from Sino. Variety goes back in with the dazzling offensive, perhaps feigning that he's got backup, but they don't fall for it. The turnaround from Ducky is huge, and Variety gets knocked up, but they don't get the kill, and now Scream and Whirlwind are both here. Sino in trouble low, but they have not yet gotten the kill. Scream shuts down Ducky first. They get the double when they come back for Sino, and Variety lives through it all. That's a huge 2-0 in the solo lane.
Really is, and the fact Variety lives there is really unfortunate, because I think what you saw in that gank attempt from Obey there is Ducky and Sino's tower management is what I want to put it down to. I think Ducky could have taken that first tower shot, and I think that was maybe the intention they were going for, but he wasn't in range of the tower to take the shot. Obviously, when using ability as Cthulhu, your movement speed is a little bit more limited as your ability's going off, but I think if he would have got in tower range there, Ducky, I think Sino would have been in a situation where he would have dived it more effectively. Sino going in before Ducky had aggro got him more tower shots than bargained for, and they couldn't get out in time too. So it was a mismanaged situation where eUnited, in fairness, responded very, very effectively there. Small mistake from Obey, like the idea from it, but eUnited capitalize again.
And remember, it happened very quickly, and I don't know just to what level this team has their communication all the way there, because initially it looked like Variety was going to try and use that CC immunity to get out, but then he comes back in with the dazzling offensive, and they have this moment where they kind of have to decide how they want to go about, if at all, trying to keep this dive going on to Variety, and I wonder if in that moment there was a little tiny bit of miscommunication. It's so difficult. It's such thin margins you're working against at this level that it is easy for those types of things to happen. And Obey, now, after having that small bit of an early lead, the game's been brought right back towards even.
Yeah, credit where it's due. They probably would have discussed that when they were both dead then. Of like, what went wrong? Oh, I took one more tower shot. Sorry, I should have tanked tower, you know? Like, it's those minor things that they'll be able to look back on in this game and go, where did it go wrong? The good news is, I like the effectiveness of those two playing together there, Finch. Like, I like how confident they were to go for that pick, and the fact that they both followed each other up. Sure, you both die, but, you know, at the end of the day, like, I'd rather you play as a team rather than individuals.
And they're the core of this team. I don't think anyone would disagree with Ducky and Sino and how important they're going to be to Obey's continued improvement. Obviously, Wolfie, Inbound, and Wowie have played well for this team, but they're going to need a little bit more from them going forward. I think that in the short term, if they're going to want wins, it's going to have to be a lot of Sino and Ducky until the whole squad is there. As we saw the beginnings of what's going to be a game-long combo from Obey, it's any kind of CC plus raw ult, and that's what they're looking for.
Love the idea from Obey, though, early on. Look at this, trying to strip the jungle away and keep the pressure going. Sure, they're a little bit behind in gold at the moment, but I love the mentality here. Trying to get the pressure early game. Ra's clear, a little bit clearer, a little bit quicker on the side of the map. Where's Rama right now? He's in the sky. But for how long?
And a bad situation. Has to use the beads. Does get a little bit of help, but Sino and Wowie do too much damage. In comes the boulder, courtesy of Snoopy, and that does push a couple members of Obey Alliance back, but not Inbound. Continuing to step forward, is able to find the knockup, and suddenly Snoopy is low HP. Whirlwind transforms, brings the house out, but at this point, Obey Alliance have already gotten their pick and backed off. I don't think eUnited are going to get anything more here.
No, I don't think they will, and I think that was a really good pick on Guy J there. Great rotation out from Obey, recognizing the situation. Funny enough, the follow-up was the most interesting thing to me. You know, when you get to that fight, Obey on the retreat after getting a pick, and Inbound's like, let's go, boys! And they're all like, guys, I've got cooldowns here. I mean, Ross time's already got off too. You're not going to find a pick. If anything, you could end up in a worse position for us, but it works out well for Obey, though. They get a bit more of a lead now, and it's playing through Sino on the Erlang Shen, which I think is a real pivotal point of this composition for me, is how well these pins can go off in these engagements. Also getting the beads at Guy J at the tail end there, thanks to the Sino ultimate, could pay off a little bit more for some more gank pressure in that dueling.
Certainly could come back. I mean, maybe even Wowie could capitalize on his own with that Fields of Love. That makes it so difficult. I don't know if we talk about it enough, but it can feel really hard to box Cupid because he can always drop that ultimate anytime. He has, as my old friend F-Dub would like to say, the threat of activation at any given moment, and you have to show them that respect. But Guy J and Snoopy are battling it out. There's that Fields of Love we talked about, and it does indeed lock down Guy J, but great work from Snoopy to prevent the follow-up, and Guy J is able to make it out.
Man, Obey, unfortunately I didn't get that kill, but Snoopy with a great Earthbreaker. I think we could have dropped the ult a second or two earlier in my eyes and been in a better position for secure. By the end of the day, it was a great little bit of defensive play on Snoopy, and now they're going to turn on Inbound, but Inbound can't get away for a second, or can he?
Let's see the snipes, though. Guy J pulls out the scope and inbounds in the dirt. That's another one for the rookie for eUnited as he continues to play the ROM well. And I don't think eUnited are done. Scream gets aggressive, finds the kill into Wowie, and that means that it's trouble now for Wolfie the Raw. Lacking mobility, just the movement speed will not be enough to elude Scream. A double for the eUnited jungle.
And where does that go wrong for Obey, right? They get a great opportunity to try and pick Guy J. They put the pressure on him, and they force him back to base. He was having to base there. They dive so deep for that pick on Guy J that eUnited just rotate and pick him apart. They lose 3 members on a dive for a kill there, Obey. You can't be doing that, in my opinion. That's a situation where Obey needs to factor in, we went for a pick, it didn't work out, at least we forced him back to base, accept that as a win. Right? Don't keep diving in trying to pick up that kill because you get punished on the tail end of eUnited's rotation there. And Obey, like, honestly, that didn't need to happen. But eUnited, they come out on top because of it.
They do. Still only about 1,000 out in front for eUnited, but they've looked great this set so far, haven't they? Scream has played well, and I was critical of him during the SPL waiting room earlier during our pregame show, and how sometimes Scream can look inconsistent, but part of the inconsistency is obviously the top end, right? And I think that's what we're getting from Scream at this point. 4-1-1 on this Achilles, who we also talked about how strong he is in solo, but equally as strong in the jungle, it would seem.
I think the funny thing about the Pro League play, right, is it's completely separate to any level of play across any
100%
of
agree.
SMITE whatsoever. These guys are like specifically, we are talking about like the top and top, the pièce de résistance of SMITE, playing against each other week in, week out, and we talk about them in a vacuum, you know? You have to. You've got to compare them against each of the teams. All these teams could be SEC teams, period. I'm 100% certain that every one of these teams could be SEC, no problem. And that's not
Take either one of these two teams,
Yeah, it's just a hard life they live, and when you look at them like this, as this close, you can amplify those mistakes because they look so much more obvious at this level. I think both these teams, though, they've shown what they can bring, and Scream is someone that we talk about a lot, and that's why I was bringing up that point. Is Scream someone that, like, on game day, he's like a LeBron, right? But now and again, he'll have one of these days where he's just not on form. Same can be said for Sido. Those two players really do feed on having a great day, and here's Inbound in trouble.
Oh, but a good Fields of Love response there from Wowie. That stops all of the aggression from eUnited. What could have been a dive has been changed, and that's a teleport from Ducky. They absolutely want this fight, but eUnited don't want a bit of it. They're hightailing it out of here, but they might have to come back. This Gold Fury forces eUnited to step back into range for Obey Alliance, so there is the Horus ultimate. Does not get inbound out of there. Hurrywind gets the kill before he can leave. Big taunt coming out from Sino, though, on the Erlong Shin. That sets up for Wowie to get the kill into Variety. It's 1-for-1 so far, but Ducky is in the back, raining absolute terror onto eUnited. Wolfie gets the kill into Hurry. It's a 2-for-1 now in favor of Obey.
I told you that team's W key from eUnited is hard locked, and Hurrywind was the one also W keyed alongside him. No real surprises there. I think Obey could have gone straight for the Gold Fury there, if I'm honest, and they didn't, which is a bit surprising to me. They might still have a window here. The amount of sustain they've got here, Finch, this is a good fight for them to take. Keep an eye on Scream, though. He's still got his ultimate up.
Yeah, this is great recognition from Obey, able to take the Gold Fury and should be able to get out of here scot-free. And this is all, I think, because of that overcommitment they made onto Wowie. You remember to the Tier 1 where he used the Fields of Love, catches them out overcommitting, they get the TP in from Ducky, and suddenly they had the position advantage around the Gold Fury.
Yeah, really, really, really fun fight from both teams, honestly. And like you said, I think it really was eUnited just overstepping their mark a little bit and Obey abusing it. I loved it a little bit, just so you know, with inbounds up, down on the ultimate coming out from Horus there too. Just giving his team that little bit of shielding to prevent some of the damage that was coming through there. It really did factor in quite big and may have been overlooked in the scale of the team fight. And it's one of the benefits of Horus, funny enough, of having that ultimate to just dunk your own team and give them a shield, especially when you're going for Blink early on and don't have Shell just yet. yet. But Wolfie played that fight really well as well. I think a lot of people won't look at the Raw as much, but his ability to move around with this mobility, he's gone for a very utility-esque build here, which I love the idea of against the composition that eUnited have drafted. You're going to W key us? No problem. I'm going to make sure that we've all got extra protections every time you do.
Trying not to give eUnited a target, I think, is part of the idea for them, because we knew Raw would be that for eUnited, as Ducky makes his way to the back line and goes to the ultimate, again, trying to hit Herwin with the knockup, but inside the house is able to avoid that. Ducky has to keep the rest of eUnited at bay, because Obey are not fully grouped up for this fight just now, so this might be a problem. If Obey try and start up a fight around FG or Pyro without this descent into madness from Ducky, it could be a lot weaker for them, but Scream is the only one here, Hindu, and he's become the target. Now he gets some backup from Variety coming into the Amaterasu, but Scream has to use the ultimate defensively. A lot of ultimates used without getting much value.
Yeah, and immediately you can see inbound reposition and Raw back to safety there. A bit of overextension from both teams. Honestly, looking through the relic usage there, I'd say, if anything, that came out in favor of Obey. A couple more relics used on the side of eUnited, like that cursed Onk, and they go straight back to the Pyro.
They want to start off, they want to force eUnited to step into a bad fight. Variety takes a lot of damage early from Sino, but Sino is running low on mana at this point. Inbound is out of health. In comes the boulder to flatten him, and now Wowie has used the Fields of Love. It might be time for Obey to be the team to start thinking about falling back.
Oh, definitely, especially with Wowie rotation in there. You heard the Fields of Love go off, but they didn't catch Scream as they wanted to there. And I actually think the beads came into play to allow Scream to escape that situation. But as soon as that happened, I think that's why Obey are surrendering a little bit. The main reason for the surrender too, in terms of the objective, is because their jungle's up and they will lose a lot of it. So they've got to fall back and defend. But that opens the window now for eUnited to 2-mana Pyro with 2 or 3 warriors, you know? It's not that hard when you got 2 warriors there to tank it up for you.
No, able to take down that Pyromancer quite well. We're 16 minutes into this contest, and eUnited have, what, maybe 500 gold to their name, a little bit of an experience lead here and there in the jungle and the hunter role, but overall, this game is basically even. Yeah, 500 gold, 600 gold is almost nothing at this point in the game. The 2,000 experience is something, but not irrecoverable for Obey at this point, so it's certainly still an even match. And remember, Obey, I think they need this win. They have been struggling so far, and now they're coming up against their closest competition. They gotta show us they can be competitive here.
I agree. I think the biggest thing about this set too, Finch, is if eUnited 2-0 here, they'll be like, I told you, we're better than those guys, right? So we're not at the bottom. But for Obey's point of view, like, getting this to a 1-1 situation, win or lose then, makes Obey look a lot better if they were to lose it. Same can be said for eUnited too. That making sure this is a 1-1 series for both teams is probably the best outlook, knowing the fact that whoever loses here today will be at the bottom of the league and kind of floundering a little bit more than most. So we'll see how this continues on, because both teams as well, Finch, don't forget, have got a big week ahead of them in my opinion. I mean, eUnited, Obey, they've got to take on eUnited here, but also PK later on. And same can be said the other way, where they've got to play PK as well on the other side. So both teams have got the next team up on the ladder, so to speak, in terms of PK, who've also been struggling this season.
Yeah, perhaps maybe Renegades could be in that conversation as well, but you're certainly correct, I think, to talk about how important this set is for them, especially considering this whole week and that they might not be able to find any more wins for a while, so you're going to want some momentum. And you talked about how I think there'd be some value in a 1-1 here for both of these teams, and I think that's a good point, too, because at least then both the teams can say it was close, that last game could have gone either direction, you know, something like that. It's something to build off of for sure, but right now, eUnited are looking plenty strong from where I'm sitting, Graham, and they played so well. Scream is still at a really strong position, and I trust Herwin's Baba Yaga pretty highly as well. It's hard not to sort of fall over towards that team.
Yeah, I'm a little bit worried about eUnited's, composition in terms of builds as well, though, because obviously they're very physical heavy this game too, and building a lot of health as well, I would say, in terms of those builds.
Yeah, a lot of damage from her.
Yeah, you don't see a Chintz coming out from Wowie yet. Maybe that's the next thing on the list here. I would expect it so. But here's our Fury fight, and look at the pick on Cthulhu.
Ducky takes a ton of damage and the executes there. That's huge for Scream to take care of the Cthulhu early. But what about the backline? Inbound has gone forward, is able to get off the heel. He even lives. And it's Guy J that drops solo for Hunter. Is not a bad trade at all. There's the stun coming out as the taunt continues to keep Inbound alive. But Variety finally able to clean up that kill. A 2-for-1 in favor of eUnited. They're fully clumped up and looking to retreat. But Sino is stepping forward, feeling confident and looking for more aggression. There's the Fields of Love. Locks in nobody, and eUnited still standing healthy on the back of this fight.
They need to get out. Obey, get out. Why are you here? Run, boys. Run. There's 4 of them. They're going to go for Fury. They want kills, baby.
This does not look like a good fight for Obey. I'm right there with you. As eUnited continue to collapse. Sino falls as well. A 3-for-1 overall in favor of eUnited. They don't have Guy J, but they should still have great damage on this Gold Fury. Just a question of if Obey will come up to steal.
I don't know. The damage is a bit lackluster in my opinion. It's going to take a while. Snipe's coming up soon, though. Can they delay or steal? I don't know.
Yes! There it is! Obey able to steal the Primal Fury. Wolfie got the ultimate back up just in time, and eUnited, despite the 3-for-1, they lose the most important part of the entire fight, Into.
So I got to go back to the fight first of all. Great play from that snipe from Wolfie, honestly. That works out great. Pyro's not available, though. Are they diving for kills? Bobby, come on! He's always looking for players, I'd say. But the good news is, this is another thing about Horace and Bobby for my liking. He can make an adjustment in air of like, maybe this isn't a good idea to go in right now, and adjust off the back of it, right? Going back to the fight real quick, Horiwin makes a huge play against Ducky at the start of that fight. He manages to get a silence held in his inventory, so when he throws that silence out after the Earthbreaker driving strike combo from Snoopy, Cthulhu's sat in the silence field, so he can't pop his ultimate. They get so much more damage off on Ducky as he tries to get out of the silence. That makes such a big window for eUnited to win that fight, and that's why it went so well for them. At the end of the day, it comes down to an individual play from Wolfie with the snipe coming back up that makes it back to an even game again from Obey's point of view. I think if Obey lose that fight, they're going to get in their own head a little bit more about where it all went wrong.
But instead, they're able to get the Gold Fury, and now, instead of thinking we just lost that fight 3-for-1, you're thinking we just came out of that fight pretty even, and all the numbers would line up with you to say you're correct. The gold now deadlocked at actually even in the 1,800 experience deficit is a decrease from the 2,200 experience deficit, and even less relevant at this point. We'll be hitting those level 20s pretty soon here as well. Not quite to that point yet, so the experience certainly matters still, but there's a shelf life on it, as this could be trouble for Hurlwin. Doesn't quite get him with the root, but they force out the ultimate, and he still won't live. Sino and inbound in the backline, cutting down the enemy mage.
That's the sort of goon squad I want to see from Obey, because I honestly, I'm going to keep harping on it, man. I'm going to harp on it. I think inbound on Horus is the answer to some of the issues that we've seen Obey have. I think he can just step up and do this to you. He can always fall back, and now Cthulhu's here. Well, have a good night. How did he get out? Are you kidding me?
Because Scream's nasty, a two-man stun is exactly what saves his life and still be able to reposition. But now they're going to reposition using the Horus ult. And he's taking them towards the Fire Giant, it looks like to me. They want to try and start this up, but Variety's nearby. It will not be a secret, Hindu Man. He steps in right away and drops the Cursed Onk. Dazzling offensive on the Wolfie to force him off the objective. That gets the Aegis from him. Fire Giant, though, goes to eUnited. They're able to strip that one away. It was the Astral Barrage, the ultimate from Guy J that secures the objective. The rookie making the big-time plays.
Guy J, what an amazing step up for the lad. And you don't expect the snipe until you're like, oh yeah, Rama. Damn, we forgot about him. We do want to talk real quick, by the way, about Variety's decision-making there. Remember game one when I was talking about Ducky going in the pit and distracting? Variety did just that. He goes in, obviously seems to get some vision granted, but he goes at the carry, the one that's going to try and clear the objective the quickest in Wowie, and forces him out of the pit. That's what you're kind of looking for sometimes in your solo laner, cause a distraction. But this is a bit of a base race situation. I don't know so much about this one.
I suppose it is. You're right. Obey seem to care not about who has the Fire Giant. They're pushing up and right. They do get the tier 2, and it does force eUnited to back off as well. So, I mean, I cannot critique it. It's a great trade for them, I think, when otherwise they would have just lost a tier 2. They've kept the game even. Yeah,
definitely. I'd say an overall advantage in that situation is probably, it's so hard to call because I feel like eUnited get advantage because it's mid towers, which is one of the easiest lanes to push down, and central to the map, obviously, so there's less safety there. But then Obey against a Fire Giant team gets 2 towers on the right hand side, that tier 2 going down there, at least keeps it even and opens up a Phoenix for them as well. Let's see what eUnited can do though on the aggression here though, Finch, because I'm excited to see where they go with this composition, because honestly, they don't have the greatest, I'd say they've got good dive potential, but I don't think they've got the greatest poke potential overall. They're really going to rely on Horiwind a lot here, whereas Obey, their wave clear is pretty effective and their front line pretty potent too at diving in if you overstep your marker. Could be a tricky task here, and I expect if we get to a Phoenix Siege, we may see United struggle a little bit.
Is it a race again? look where Obey are. They're all pushing down that tier 1 and left, but now the backs are coming out. We can see Sino and Ducky backing back to defend while the rest of the team continues to trade out some towers. So eUnited able to grab the tier 1 in solo. Obey grab the tier 1 in the duo lane, and they continue to push, it looks like. They still got Flowey up there, but now with some defense from eUnited, they're forced to pull back. But I think this is kind of working. eUnited are not using their FG as efficiently as they could be because they keep defending.
Yeah, conversation on that left-hand side from Obey was very much a tricky one, because you could see the backs coming through and then the cancel of backs. They were trying to work out, do we go for the tier 2? But if we do, is eUnited going to force this situation down on that Phoenix? They had already sent Ducky back early. I think they could have waited for Ducky to find out what's going on before they back. I think they could have pressured for a tier 2 there. But they played it safe, and I think with Obey, really, they should play it safe is the better strategy overall. Less mistakes means more chance of winning in my eyes. So I'm not against the call there. eUnited, like you said though, Finch, they don't get a whole lot out of this FG so far, and that's, in fairness, credit to Obey, kind of pulling them around the map a little bit.
I think so too. They've eaten up a good amount of time for eUnited, so I don't know if eUnited are going to have even a siege on this. Obviously, a Fire Giant where you clear up the map, take down these towers, is still valuable. It's not nothing by any means, but you'd think in a close match like this that sometimes the Fire Giant can really break the game open. If at the end of this, Obey are only down 5,000 gold or so, I mean, that's not too bad. You're probably thankful.
Completely agree. Now, when we get to the Phoenix Siege, if we get to one, keep an eye on Scream with the Blinks. But hold on before, here comes Bobby!
Yeah, he's used it to the skies ultimate to go right to the back, and Sino is there with him. They're able to get the beads out from Scream very early on. So up to the sky goes Guy J, but when he lands, he could be in trouble. Good roll allows him to reposition, but now they're going to try to collapse onto Snoopy instead. He's able to get back with his squad as Wolfie and Wowie are low in the back. Variety gets the kill all on his own. Now, what about Ducky? The big Cthulhu is hard to take down. The snipe from Wolfie is able to find Herwin in the back and bring him down low. It's a lot of the damage taken out, but Ducky falls as well. A 2 for 0 for eUnited, but make it 2 for 1.
Fire Giant just wore off 2 on eUnited, and I think that's one thing they didn't really bargain for in that engagement. So now the chase could be on because the sustain from Obey, and the chase potential's here. Obey could find a pick or two. Remember, Guy J still got his relics, but he did use his ultimate.
There's the beads, and Herwin is not here. He backed after this fight, and Sino is able to close the gap and get the kill onto Guy. That is huge to shut him down at this point. Get a little bit of extra time for Obey to breathe. What a ludicrous engagement in the jungle, though, Hindu. That looked like eUnited grouping up to try and take down some towers, but instead Obey are all into the backline.
I'm not really against it either, because that kind of catches eUnited a little bit by surprise, right? Because you don't expect a team to run you down as you've got FG trying to take a tier 2 on the left-hand side. They've not contested you the entire time of going through the towers. They just split pushed. So out of nowhere, seeing this Horus jump on in, and Sino's right there alongside him, funny enough, going ham on the backline. Love the idea. Variety, though, by the way, just to bring him up, goes straight to the backline carries, and that's why Wolfie and Wowie had a tough old time getting in that fight. Good snipe out from Wolfie, though, but Variety just going for the backline. Beautiful plays, good decision making there, really distracting what Obey were trying to do. I don't know about pulling this FG, though, in a 5-on-4. A little bit risky.
It does feel risky, but theoretically you have the best confirm in this snipe from Wolfie, so maybe this could be favorable for them. But there's the snipe used early, so what the hell do I know as the rest of Obey start to fall back. eUnited, though, are still grouped up near the top side. This battle will continue, but the healing favoring Obey. Look how healthy they are.
He's going again! He's going mad. He's a madman. I love Bobby. And he's going to take Sino with him. Look at the choice in who he's taking. Into Scream they go. Round the corner comes Ducky. Ducky got his ultimate up too. eUnited are getting pincered a little bit here, Finch. But the damage onto inbound's causing problems.
Oh, but there's the Fields of Love. That should lock down Herwin in the backline and get the kill. And Ducky is able to keep members out, but Guy completely able to chew through him. There's the snipes. Can't hit the last one onto inbound, but Scream's there to clean it up. A 2 for 1 in favor of eUnited, and they're continuing to surge forward, feeling strong at this point in the game, but Obey are out. eUnited head towards the FG instead, and hey, Wolfie's got the snipe back up. You know, maybe it'll be for the confirm.
Yeah, they're not doing FG just yet, though. They're trying to lure in Obey. I like this idea. Snoopy on zone duty right now. FG not even started. They're looking for a pick, but that Earthbreaker off the mark sprung the trap and let Obey get away with a bit of murder there for my liking. I'm surprised that United knew Fire Giant there. That's a mistake from them. I really feel they should have gone for it, and then Snoopy could go in. They could have taken it by now with how long that took, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, that does end up hurting them a bit, as obviously eUnited come out ahead. Now in the 4v3, they start with the Fire Giant. It's down to half, but Wolfie still has his ultimate. It's hard to feel safe if you're eUnited to grab it, but Snoopy took a ton of damage. Wowie just gets the kill on him. Guy is falling too. They're losing the 4v3 as Wowie gets the double kill, stepping up for Obey in a do-or-die situation. Variety is able to get the kill on the Wolfie elsewhere on the map, but this has completely dumpstered eUnited's chances of getting this FG. Wowie gets the threefer.
Well, we played that fight really well, but credit to Sign-Off for creating that space for him and realizing Wowie was alongside him. I really think Wowie just needs a supporting factor in front of him at all times, and if he's got the confidence that someone's alongside him, he really can play effectively well. I think sometimes he just doesn't get that window. Sign-Off's having a really good field day too, by the way. When you've got all these melee characters against you, you're like, cool, I like to brawl with auto attacks. Let's find out how long you can survive before you're trying to run away from me, and that's what's paying off from here. Now it's Obey on the FG. Wowie's on his way. It's taking a little bit longer for Wowie to get here. Variety could cause some problems again, remember. He did it last time. Keep an eye on what Variety can do to defend this.
Still doesn't have the dazzling offensive yet. That's his best tool for disrupting this Fire Giant. It's getting lower. Ducky transforms for the zone, and Obey secure the objective. Variety melts inside the lava pools, and suddenly Obey have the Fire Giant. Suddenly Obey can be the ones on offense. They need this to go well. We're 30 minutes in. This is where Obey usually struggles, but can they find a way to pull it together?
I mean, you can see the player damage on the screen now, right? Honestly, most of the majority of damage coming off from Unite is on Baba Yaga. Hurriwin's doing a great job in these fights, by the way, of playing aggressive and defensive at the same time. But because he's got Warriors on his team here, Finch, they don't have the damage output as much as others, you know? Erlang Shen, sure, an exception to the rule, but Cthulhu alongside them. Like, Obey have just got more consistent damage dealers in this one. It's showing. Take into account, they've also got the sustain here, too. These Warriors can't 100-0 them in time, even with an execute.
But look at Scream. He's coming along the back of this fight to try and lock them down with the Phoenix, but it doesn't work. The Field of Love actually catches him out, and it's Scream who ends up falling. The flank doesn't work at all. It's Scream pays the price. That's a mid-lane Phoenix for Obey, and they're going to walk right over to right and do the same thing. Healing up with Wolfie's healing as well. Obey are in a good position.
Yeah, they're really honest. Just more composure now is the biggest key for them. They've got a Fury they could potentially take. I think the idea of sieging in a 4v5 is the right call here for Go for Phoenix. But don't bite off more than you can chew here is what I'm going to try and say. Like, don't feel like you've got to force this situation. Although Inbound, he thinks different.
Yeah, you're talking about the wrong guy here. But Inbound, they're absolutely going into the back of the Phoenix. Able to find the big two-man stun to shut them down. That's the right side Phoenix falling as well, and Wolfie might be low, might be falling, but Wowie gets the kill in a Variety, able to heal up a bit with these hearts as well. And they've got Snoopy locked down inside the mire, but able to make it back towards the actual Titan room to get away. Ducky is so low, and Guy is chewing through him. They get the first kill. Now it's Snoopy moving in for the pull to look for a second, but Obey make it out of there. They got two Phoenixes. I don't know if eUnited can even push defending two waves of fire minions.
I think you're right, and I think that's the key here. Is United definitely on the back foot now, but I think Obey, as I was saying, kind of dropped the ball a little bit there. I think they could have got that Phoenix without the whole dive in. I'm not sure if Wolfie meant to go with him or Inbound made him come. I'm not sure. Like, you can kind of step out of that hole. But what this is open is United can get a Gold Fury now on this left-hand side. I mentioned that a little bit. So there's a small window that United like, hey, that could have gone way much worse for us than it actually did. And that's things Obey got to improve on. Sure, they get a Phoenix. Sure, they're in command and lead there. But you will make mistakes like that. You're going to get punished in the long run. So Obey in a great position now, and it's on the eUnited to try and defend. Funny enough, like you said, their clear is going to be problematic against fire minions in two lanes.
It is. It's going to be really tough for them to keep those waves pushed out efficiently without having to commit a whole lot of time to making that happen. You can even kind of see the beginnings of that with Variety trying his hand at keeping it cleared out. But Scream, for me, was the big difference maker in that fight, and the fact that he didn't get a whole lot of value. He tried this long-term flank to try and come underneath them on the mid-lane Phoenix, but he just gets handled. The Field of Love is huge there to lock him down. Wowie is absolutely swinging at this point in the game, and then Obey can take a 5v4 over to the right side Phoenix and get away with a slightly sloppier engage because they've got the advantage.
Yeah, credit where it's due as well. I just want to bring up to what we've seen out of Cthulhu this game from Ducky too. He's won 5-7. That stat line does not read what he's been doing for this team, if I'm honest. The problem is that he's not living as long as he would like to, and that's mainly due to Guy J's build, which is fantastic under the circumstances. Someone going to build health into you? No problem, bro. Give me those chins. Give me that Heart Seeker. Give me that Soul Reaver. Like, they're the items you want in those situations, right? Percent health. Like, you're going to chew through Ducky on the front line, so Ducky can't stand and bang as long as he wants to, because also he's got a bit of sustain in there, sure, but Cursed Ankh, that's going to hurt more than it's going to help in the long run now.
Mid Phoenix not too far from respawning, but eUnited, this fight is going to happen under the left Phoenix. Relics will be available for everyone. Ultimates available for everyone. So a relatively even fight that could easily decide the fate of this match. Can Obey find a win, or will eUnited shut them down 2-0 and seat them firmly at the bottom? A lot hangs on this very next fight here, Hindu.
We got to wait on the minions. That's what I'm saying. If I'm Obey right now, wait on those right-hand side minions. Someone's going to go clear them. Otherwise, we've seen a lot of Winions this year already. They'll do the donkey's work on that Titan if they need him to. Split the map up a little bit. Let Sino get a 1v1 or even a 2v1. Or take Cthulhu to the back. Interesting.
They're going back towards the left side Phoenix with it to the Skies ultimate, and there's the damage from Wolfie that is chewing, or Wowie rather, chewing through the left side Phoenix. Variety goes in first, forces the back line to disengage. Guy J tried to follow up with the snipes, but they're not going to be enough for the kill, maybe a little bit too early, but Obey are in full retreat mode, so it's absolutely worked so far. Now the rest of United have to go defend mid Phoenix, while Obey heal up inside the heal from Raw.
And now that middle Phoenix will be back up, the right one's going to come up too, Finch. I think Obey, like, they forced their hand, they went all in on Hurrywin, but Hurrywin did a very good job of buying time. Had a shell for himself too, don't forget. But also, Guy J, you heard me shout for the snipes because he went all in on Wowie. Who's going to clear that Phoenix? Let's be honest. Sino's not going to look at a Phoenix before he looks for a kill. I'll tell you that now. So Wowie, meanwhile, he's the only one that's going to focus that Phoenix down. What does Guy J do? Go to the sky, snipe out Wowie, force him further back, and means they can't get that left-hand Phoenix. And it opens this window for eUnited to get their Phoenixes back up. But now we're on a Fire Giant fight, and this could be an even bigger opportunity for either team.
It could be. This is huge. Ducky has already been focused in the back. He does not have the Descendant to Madness of Ultimate available for him, but Snoopy is the one that looks like he is getting punished very, very low as Variety makes it to the back line all alone. Got a little bit of help from the damage from Hurrywin, and Obey look worse for wear, but Obey are the ones with a big heal. They can afford to stick around and sustain, whereas eUnited have to take backs.
And now because you can see a couple on the right-hand side, Obey might get aggressive around this Fire Giant again. Warp placement, funny enough, I mean, you're going to have to clear out a couple there so they know now eUnited are here. And eUnited have managed to get back from base. Keep an eye on Guy J. Remember, he stole an FG earlier. Don't be surprised if they go for it.
Big snipe onto Variety. They clearly want to get rid of him early, and they're going to chase him out to the right-hand side. Sino even gets the pin, and Snoopy's been caught out too. He's in trouble, stuck in the middle of all this damage from the Cthulhu, still getting knocked up and still falling to inbound, and Obey are surging for it. They're ready to keep this fight going, and the rest of United trying to fall back underneath the right side Phoenix. They'll have to hold off for a moment, though. Obey waiting for minions before they push in.
Give up the Phoenix. Give up the Phoenix here for me, United, and just hold on to the Titan. With 4v5, you can't lose the game. I think you give up the Phoenix here, Finch. They do have a lot of ults, though, but what can they do with them?
But they don't have a ton of relics. Neither one of the hunters came into this with all the defensive relics available, as the right side Phoenix is falling lower and lower. Obey's stick and able to take that right side Phoenix down. Now they're retreating. As you asked for, eUnited don't overcommit to the Phoenix, and they're definitely still in it.
Yeah, 4v5, you know, you've got a lot of ultimates up still. Your relic situation not the greatest. Guy J has no relics there. You're looking at your carries and you're like, can we hold this? Is it worth trying to defend this? And if we lose the game, right? So why not surrender it, wait for your man to come back up in Snoopy, give yourself a window. Because Obey, they ain't going to go for a Titan there. And if they do, you're going to punish them. They will die at that Titan for sure. Instead, they get a second Lead of Lice in my eyes, and that's why United should have waited, and why they did, in my opinion. Let's see what happens here, though. Inbound's going again.
Yeah, it sure looks like this was all a bait. They're going to use the To the Skies ultimate to get right to the back
Hurrywin.
line. They lock down Hurrywin and Guy J
Good
first,
shell.
knowing that they're all alone. They don't have the defense, and they cannot fight this alone. Guy J sure is trying, though, as he keeps on. But Ducky has too much damage for him. Inbound is in a little bit of trouble now as well, but they don't have the damage. No, Hurrywin does have a potion in the back pocket, so it's 1-for-1 Hunter for support.
Yeah, and the big key there, eUnited's carries get split from their peelers more than anything else. That was left Guy-J and Horrorwind on their own, and that was honestly Inbound's ultimate in that split the difference there. eUnited were caught in the jungle. Their frontline tanks weren't able to get in that fight and was zoned away. It was a good opportunity there, recognized. Again, I'm going to keep harping on it. I really like Inbound on Horus. I will say, if I'm against Obey ever, I just ban Horus and I'm not worried, but I do feel his threat on Horus is something to watch out for.
It gives him a chance, I think, to make those heavy engages he likes to, but to get sort of a moment to assess the situation first instead of being all in immediately, which I think is pretty critical for Bobby, to just have that extra moment to take a breather and maybe retreat if need be. But if the moment's good, he can engage. But look at eUnited. They're the ones looking to engage over an Oni Fury in the late game. Obey grab it. And eUnited do not overcommit, so now they'll have to worry about Oni waves in all 3 lanes.
Yeah. That's a huge play from Obey there to get that Fury, because those Oni minions are going to put so much pressure on all the Phoenixes now. This opens the door for a Fire Giant. It's going to force somebody on eUnite to sit back and defend these Oni minion waves, which is probably going to be variety with the fact he's got a teleport. Maybe they send like a Rama towards the mid lane, question mark, just because he can snipe into the pit if they go for it here. But this is a tall task now for eUnited. Also, don't forget, the Phoenix on the right-hand side already went down, Finch, so they're super fire minion waves coming down that right-hand side. That's why they're white on the minimap right now. Just keep an eye on how long these take to clear and who they send to deal with that too.
Yeah, it won't take long for those minions to make short work of anything in front of them, and eUnited know that they have to try and find a way to cheat over there. That's why Obey are stepping forward. They won't give them the opportunity. A Scream has been brought down to about half. There's the snipe landing on a Scream as well as Wolfie puts more damage and forces the TKO. Ducky still has the ultimate in his back pocket, so he's not worried. And they've got the heals from Horus and the heals from Rob. Was there a fight at all? Obey are back to healthy.
This is good from Obey. They're not being greedy. You don't need to pull FG yet. Let the minions work up the lane first of all. However, now that Rama started those, it looks like they've changed their mind and going to commit here, knowing that Scream's in mid lane. But now they may have to take a fight. Ducky pops the ult.
They pop the Frenzy as well. Inbound wants to get to the back of the fight and look for Horrorwind and Guy. They go for Snoopy right away. He's able to live through it. As way in the back line, Variety and Scream are trying to form a team, but the Fields of Love forces the disengage. That leaves Guy-J largely alone with only Snoopy for peel, and he is not enough. Ducky is able to get the kill. It's a 1-for-0.
Wolfie's played this game so well. Wolfie and Worry, honestly, in this one, Worry's secret assassin, by the way, 9, 2, and 3. But Wolfie's juke boots have been something else on this Raw. He's managed to live so long against these warriors by juking around with that mobility. That's been a big factor in this, because this Obey squad, to me, at times, reminds me of the old Trig boys. It reminds me of the old Lobster Fun Bowler backline when they had Cuvo, Fred, and Trix in the team, where they would be abandoned by their divers, right? Funny enough, Ducky was on a team with those guys too. But it reminds me of the dive where the carries get left on their own a lot of the time from Obey, and it's on Wolfie and Worry to self-peel, and they're doing a good job, this game specific, at peeling for each other and themselves, which is opening up this window.
I know he's not the highest, but I think the Cupid is the biggest problem in this game, as underneath the mid Phoenix, there's already trouble for Obey. Way in the back, Wolfie's low and has to fall back, but it's Horrorwind who falls first. Variety joins him as Wowie gets yet another kill, and they could potentially push back. They get the mid Phoenix and drop it down right onto the Titan, goes inbound, and Obey only have Scream and Snoopy to defend. Obey have struggled to find a win all phase. Could it be happening for him right here and now? Guy-J's back up though, and that's a lot of damage. The Frenzy popped by Obey to continue pushing onto the Titan. It's down to half, down to a quarter, and eUnited can't defend. Obey find that burst to win and push eUnited back.
Yeah, Obey there, honestly, for my liking, great performance out of them overall. It was a really, really good game to watch, and I think that both of these teams can take something away. I think Obey as a whole have really been saying as of late they believe that they're on par with some of these other teams that are also down there with them. It's a good opportunity for them to see, and the fans at home, to see how close it may be between these two teams. Tied up at 1-1. Best situation for both these teams on paper now. Sure, one of you is going to lose, that's fine, but it wasn't just a blowout, and that's the danger for both these two teams getting blown out here. I think the biggest issue for eUnited there, though, Finch, they drafted a lot of tanks there. They drafted a lot of frontline, and they couldn't kill the backline because the backline self-peeled so effectively. I think it's back to the drawing board from a little bit there. It may shake things up.
They gave up a lot in picks and bans by letting Obey get the Cthulhu and the Cupid, and I think those are both really huge factors in this game. So a little bit to look at those picks and bans as we get it back to the desk one more time.
Who doesn't love a surprising victory against all odds? I'm not talking about Obey, of course. I'm talking about Aang over Firelord Ozai. Spoiler alert, but the show's super old. You should have watched it by now. You can celebrate the iconic moment by piloting Aang as Merlin in your own games. Now, if your game's going to be anything like mine, the Merlin skin won't actually help you win, but you'll feel better once you lose, because at least you looked cool doing it, I suppose. You know who needs to feel better right now, though, Gormizer, is eUnited, because they just suffered a loss at the hands of Obey. A very, very close game, back and forth, a couple objective steals. Wolfie gets one, Guy J another, but ultimately, Obey end up ahead. And I gotta say, for me, it was the Sino show. I mean, this whole setup composition really worked around this Erlong Shen, and Sino was able to get into the back line consistently with help from inbound and really, really cause problems for United.
Oh yeah, it was absolutely just two factors. It was, like you said, Sino set up, being able to get back there consistently or pin someone down to make sure that the team was going to be able to isolate someone. Or, and this is something that they did as they transitioned into the late game, it just became that their healing was so much that, you know, Obey would run in, essentially lose a fight, fall back by like 30 feet, sit still for a little while under a heal, and then be like, cool, now we can fight again. United's either had to back or they're at half health. We have control. So I think there's two factors that play into this, but the fact that it was so, not even easy, but it made it look easy there for Sino to lock down Whirlwind, especially early on, I think made it a lot different for the team and stopped that power curve from coming online. Whirlwind still comes out and does max damage, but the fact that Sino was able to help isolate as many targets as he did really opened it up. 10, 2, and 5 for Wowie looks more impressive, but I think Sino and Ducky made sure that the setup was there for the rest of the team.
I agree. I think that Wolfie surviving the dive, as Hinduman put it, it was super important for sure, because they were really relying on that healing from him. 21,000 from Wolfie, 7,000 from Wowie. I mean, we're talking over 30k healing easily for Obey Alliance, despite an Ankh, 2 Toxic Blades, Divine Ruin, a Brawler's Beatstick. That out-of-combat healing comes in clutch for Obey Alliance, and they win the war of attrition up against the United.
That's one of those things. Your anti-heal can do a lot against a Cupid. It could do a lot against a Horus. It could do a lot against a Ra. But when you put all three of them together, there's too much to overcome. Just adding it up very fast, like you said. I mean, approaching 35,000 there. And it's just ridiculous that that's even with them getting shut down. That's with all of that anti-heal online. Otherwise, you could easily have hit 50,000 healing for Obey throughout this game, assuming the game for some reason went on long enough for you to do so. So I think it's just one of those moments that their composition played very well to their strengths, and it played well to the engagements. They were able to handle it well. I just don't know if eUnited are going to let them have something like that again.
Can't wait for picks and bans in game number 3, because I think this one's going to be very, very interesting on how it breaks down. The Horus pick there for inbound looked pretty impactful in terms of those ultimates. The setup sometimes maybe a little bit off, but ultimately I think that that's the right sort of identity for this Obey squad, is just giving Bobby something that can get in there alongside Sino, and that's really just what worked for them in that game. United back in that first pick slot. It is worth noting that first pick has won both of the games so far during the set, so United already off to a small advantage.
And I also think it's worth noting, like, you know, Fire Giant hasn't been a very big buff for Obey or United. Both of them going into this week only had 3. Obey now being able to get up there. But throughout the first phase, Obey were only ever able to get 14 Fire Giants, so having that power play on their side, I think, enabled them so much more. And just to put it in perspective, 14 throughout Phase 1, that's the same amount that Ghost has gotten in 3 weeks here in Phase 2. So that's why I think, you know, they got this lead, and all of a sudden were able to run with it. I mean, they've never been in a position where they were able to be that far ahead, that much healing, that much sustain. So I'm hoping for them, if they want to win, to find themselves in a similar position. But I'm really hoping to see eUnited adapt well. I think the Amaterasu ban makes sense. Oleron and Freya are kind of must bans, but honestly, it feels like they're maybe missing some of the key factors that let Obey win.
Well, already Persephone is still open right now for Obey. You look at what other options eUnited could have here. Cthulhu still open. And Obey going to ban the Cthulhu. That leaves Persephone open here for eUnited, and as I noted at the very top of this set, you feel like this is a comfort pick for Whirlwind, has played it more than most other mid laners, and it looks like that's where eUnited's going to go. Now, despite that comfort level there for Hurry in the mid lane. It did not result in a win last week when he was able to get his hands on the Flower Girl, but it looks like they're going to give it another run back this time. Persephone top pick here for eUnited. Obey Alliance, they've top 2'd Cupid every single game so far this set. I can't imagine that'll change just because of a Persephone.
Especially after that last game, I think you got Wowie on something he's comfortable and confident on. You just keep putting him on that because it's going to bring some security over there. And, you know, much like Hindu had said, that was a good performance that we've gotten to see out of Bobby compared to what we've seen out of him pretty much all year, really. So maybe the Horus is something that is worth picking up. eUnited could easily try to strip that away. Hercules has been very big for both of these teams, although he hasn't won just yet. But I think this Cupid has been essential in keeping Wowie comfortable and safe. Got a good dash, got good heals, got good clear, so there's not a lot of pressure you can get on just this Hunter alone.
Wukong top 2 again for Obey Alliance. It did not work out for them super well in game number 1, to say the least. I'm just surprised by this score. I mean, it's pretty clear that Obey are... I don't think Obey think Wukong is so strong they need to top 2 it. It is the... We don't know what we want to pick in the rest of the composition. It's a safe blind pick that we can go early on here. But I feel like you got to come in with a little bit more than the Wukong top 2 in game number 3. Are you surprised they pick it up?
A little bit. I honestly feel like, and maybe it is because Sino loves to run weird things in the jungle all the time, but it feels kind of like this is the position where maybe you could pick up that jungle. Sometimes you want to hold on to your mid, but maybe your support could go up here as well. It just feels like the solo kind of idealization, I guess, up at the top is maybe a little too much, especially considering that's one of the roles that we used to see. It had the biggest counter. It was always your last pick when you were in the second slot because you wanted that counter matchup. But now it feels like it's going to be solid. It was one of the best performers for Obey in game 1, but that wasn't really easy, or sorry, wasn't very difficult to accomplish. It was very easy for Ducky to look good that game.
Interesting. So Nemesis gets picked up, made it through the ban phase, did not get picked up until the last pick before the second ban phase, and a smart insta-Hebo ban by Obey, as that is the god that gives Nemesis the most trouble. Interesting that eUnited don't pick the ROM, and if I'm on Obey, that is absolutely my second ban here once they get priority back, because Guy J, despite the loss in the last game, had another fantastic game on that Hunter.
Yeah, showcase exactly where you want those ROM snipes to go, right? I mean, he gets a Fire Giant steal. You don't really need much more of a reason to go back to a ROM pick, but I think his damage, there was a point where it looked like it was about to end. Obey, at least in my eyes, felt like they could walk in. It was about 36 minutes in, and then I saw the damage numbers come out from Guy J, and Cthulhu just melted in front of him, and that was that moment where I was like, yeah, okay, I continue to see why we keep talking about this ROM, and specifically why they should go back to it. And it's not going to get banned out here, Aggro, so I hope they pick it up again.
Can't imagine they'd go any other direction. That would certainly be a surprise to me. As no Horus ban, surprisingly enough, for eUnited. With how well Inbound piloted that in some of those team fights, a little surprised that United doesn't decide to take it away. Instead, they ban the Kuzenbo, and what do you know? Right back to the Horus, go Obey Alliance. Also worth noting that Merlin and Ra still available for Wolfie, who will get the final counter pick in this game for what it's worth. So he gets to see the whole draft before deciding on who he wants to pick. Now eUnited tasked with finishing off their draft, still waiting on Guy J and what Scream is going to play, and Scream goes to the Circuit. No one else playing this god right now, Gormizer, but Scream has had some great highlights on it as of late.
Not only that, but I actually like where they're going with this. Horus, Cupid, two things that were very, very big throughout it. And we were talking about all this anti-heal. You've got everything in these items, these relics, to try and slow it down. What do you have now? Well, you've got Cerberus, who's got passive anti-heal, and you've got Circuit, who has 100% anti-heal on her ult, which is just going to be good for finding that one target pick. That's someone Horus can't save. That's someone Cupid cannot save anymore. And while it's, I think, still going to be difficult to get the lockdown, especially considering there's a lot of dashes and mobility on the side of Obey, I think what they're going for is more of a shutdown to Obey from what they just saw in Game 2. It's still pretty high risk. I don't know, like, there's kind of a good reason we haven't been seeing Circuit. Other junglers are doing kind of, well, countering people better right now. She's really good in terms of power. She can do great if you want to go, like, crit routes with her. I just don't know if she's going to hold up to, like, this Nemesis who's going to help shred through the Cerberus and Hercules.
Man, Circuit into Cupid, too, is such a scary sort of proposition. The whole kit revolves around being able to use mobility. Cupid's ultimate prevents you from using mobility. So I think that's a scary matchup there for Scream. Who do you think is going to take this game, Gore? Who's getting their first dub?
Man, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I like Obey's a little bit more. The Horse, the Cupid looked really good. Soul and Wukong might need a little work from game 1, but I think this Nemesis is going to be the great equalizer. It gives Sino something that's not only good for him, but it's good right now in general over there. I think it helps shut down a lot of what eUnited. Unless this Persephone is just absolutely off the charts compared to what we saw last week, I don't know that eUnited have anything to really equalize what Obey have picked up.
Well, someone's going home with a win, and we're going to find out very, very shortly. John Finch and Hindu Man here to bring you the action.
Could it have ended any other way between these two teams? Game number 3 seems like it was always in the cards. And I think Gore set us up perfectly for this one. Yeah, great script there, Hindu Man. An excellent job.
Thanks.
Because I really do think all the pressure is on Hurrywind. He's the only pick that I would consider a high enough value to make up for giving this Nemesis Cupid over to Obey. Wow, he looked excellent on it. The best he's looked all phase. And we all know how strong Nemesis is. This is a scary draft for eUnited to try and beat.
I agree, it is a scary draft, but I also think eUnited kind of telegraphed the situation of like, we don't want to play against Raw again, was the big key here for me, because they drafted the Cerberus early to, you know, force you away from wanting to go healers A, but B, the Circuit pick, and as Aggro rightly pointed out the desk, not a great pick into a Cupid matchup there, but it is good against a Raw situation, right? So they were trying to force Obey's hand, and I think that's why we see the Sol again. I think that's going to be an awkward matchup, I feel like, of how well Wolfie can really do on the Sol in this game specifically, and when we talk about Persephone, sure, we don't see her that often as of late. She gets banned consistently at the highest level. Credit where it's due, though, Hurrywind has probably been the best Persephone player I've seen in the league and has shown its potential multiple times. I'd be more comfortable having that than others, so it makes sense to me there. Great driving strike!
That's huge. Snoopy able to push him back in, but I don't think they've got the damage just yet to get the kill. He gets another pull, and Wowie comes back. Snoopy getting the first blood for United. I guess I was technically right inbound, Limbs, but first blood either way is Wowie's the one that drops.
And that's Snoopy's aggressive in the dual lane, you know. That he can be useful on this Hercules in that early game. Driving strike onto 1, blink driving strike, and then he hits level 2, gets the Earthbreaker up, and catches Wowie for the kill, and now there could be a kill here!
It's a 2-man driving strike, pushes them back in towards Sino, but they did not have the follow-up there to be able to capitalize. But still, that's huge. Wolfie has to use the beads in response. Wowies are already down. Look how Snoopy is using this Hercules already to control the early game pace. It's a red buff invade. It's first blood. They're stealing relics. eUnited are out of the gates hot.
They're angry. It's kind of giving me reminiscence of the way Adaptin plays. When Adaptin loses a game, you know, he comes in hot next game. Snoopy, he's off to the races already, man. He's already trying to get the check and get out. He's done. He's had enough of this set already. That was a great individual play from Snoopy early on. And I think that's one thing that people haven't really got to see out of Snoopy yet, because he played a couple of Cthulhu games. He's not really settled into the support role yet. He's still settling in. But you can see the potential there, you know? You can see the potential if he can pick the windows right. And it's given eUnited a really good starting position where he takes some pressure off Scream in the early game, which is one thing you always want.
It is, and it gives Scream an opportunity to come in and find some avenues that don't force him to try and be an early game Circuit, because it can be tough, because Circuit her damage is not, it is high, but it's not quick. It's this sort of slow setup-y damage where you gotta hit the Cobra's Kiss, you gotta make sure you're hitting the Deathbane, then getting the auto to proc the poisons. It's kinda can take a lot sometimes to get all that damage out. Give him time to get online, as there's the great driving strike from Snoopy to stop Bobby's setup.
Beautiful idea as well. I like Bobby's, you know, potential, looking for a pick there, keep the pressure rolling, but Snoopy's reaction time was perfect. Blink into driving strike. He heard the blink.
That's hard to do.
And sound in the game of Smite, just so you all at home know, this is one of the biggest things as a caster as well, but as a player too. Having music playing in the background if you're trying to get better at the game will not make you better. Hearing every audio cue in the game is really key sometimes, because you can hear the blink before you can really react with your eyes. You'll hear it. Trust me.
Hindu, there's sound effects? I'm just blasting Fall Out Boy all the time. I don't hear any of them. So there's sound cues in the game, man? Okay, maybe I turned it off.
That sounds about right. It sounds about right. Sometimes when in certain games, like when you hear a Thanatos in the game, when there's a Loki in the game, they're prime examples of when you should have audio as your main focus point. Sound effects only.
Yeah.
Morrigan too, another good example. But just understanding and hearing those abilities go off lets you know what's on cooldown, even if they don't get called and you don't see it.
Scream really wants to try and make this red buff invade happen. Hurwin's nearby too, but Obey Alliance are here in force to defend, so I don't know if this red buff invade is going to be huge, but they're backing off. Look at this. Wolfie and Sino go back to mid. eUnited get the red buff.
And Lotus, this is an adaptation from Game 1, Finch, right? Remember Game 1? That exact play results in a kill on Wolfie in the same scenario there, where Wolfie and Sino and Inbound are all kind of watching them invade the red, and one of them commits and ends up dying and paying the price. Instead, surrender the buff. Your early game's not going well. Your composition in the early game is not potent. You are going to struggle in the early game. Let eUnited have their way, but let them make a mistake and try and capitalize later on. I prefer this adjustment from Obey. It's the right adjustment, and they've made it, which is a good sign so far.
This wouldn't be a bad time for Sino to actually do this gank. Ducky and Variety just traded out their ultimates over there in solo, but it looks like Sino just wants to get the totem, even with Scream nearby. So now there's a little bit of action for Snoopy. He's been locked down in the fields of love. He had a great start to this game, but could he fall here? A big driving strike gets him out. Wowie and Inbound completely on the back foot now, and Snoopy survives what could have been a dangerous moment.
Yeah, and I want to give credit as well to the builds coming out from both supports here. They are both getting focused in these engagements a lot, so it's no surprise to see them both go for reinforced Greaves this same too. I think that extra little bit of health you get from the Greaves, as long as the protections too, really helps Snoopy survive there. But more importantly, like, just making sure you slap that mitigate wounds ahead of time before an engagement happens means that any damage you take, you will sustain some of it back up. And you felt that on that little pick attempt on Snoopy there.
Now remember, they were both buffed as well, I believe, getting a little bit of additional health, the reinforced Greaves and the reinforced shoes, but they're both on Greaves here as warriors. But you're right, that, there's definitely some additional value there to be had in terms of those tank boots, getting them off to a good start early.
Yeah, they'll help them out a little bit more in some of these team fights too. Specifically, I'd say for Inbound, there's a bit more dot damage that's going to come through here and there too from these two teams, so see how this goes.
But does look like we've got a pause, so we'll get to work on getting all these players back in and getting this action continuing, because this has turned into an excellent set. And I think, Hindo, we expected it between these two teams and how we expected them to be relatively even matched. Game 1 was a stomp for eUnited. Game 2 was really close, really tough, but 40 minutes, Obey get the win. I feel like even with that 1-1, Obey might have a little bit to prove since they were the ones that got stomped in that first game.
I think both teams in Game 3 have got something to prove specifically. I think Obey, for all, are like, yes, I've proven it, we can do it, now let's just keep going and take the set. eUnited, on the other hand, anger, you know, like, we won Game 1, we won Game 1 convincingly, and we opened the door multiple times in Game 2. Let's put this to bed and make sure we're not at the bottom. But again, it's that conversation about, like, the top and the bottom of the league. There is a separation there now. You've seen it over the season. But I do think these two teams on paper, with where they stand now, are a lot closer than people may have given them credit for.
I'm surprised. Another red buff invade without much contest, and there's the Grasp of Death. There is the ultimate coming out from Scream as well, and Snoopy gets another kill. It's Inbound taking that death that he narrowly avoided back in the early game. So now a 2-0 start for eUnited, plus these back-to-back red buff invades. They need this to go well. Ooh. This gank looking for it here onto Variety. Lovely. They're able to get it with the Somersault Cloud, so it's 2 for 1.
That was a really nice little gank opportunity from Obey on the right-hand side. Yes, the red buff goes down. Yes, Inbound goes down trying to defend it. But at least we saw something happening on the map. Sino makes the adjustment. Hey, guys, we can't contest the red anymore. They keep coming in and stealing the red buff. What can I do differently? I know I'll pressure the solo lane where Variety is a little bit vulnerable right about now. Let's look there. And that gank was well played by both the two members of Obey, by the way. Sino dashes in, and immediately Variety tries to ult, and Sino goes, nope, still got a second dash. Lol. Runs away, and Ducky meanwhile just dunks on down for the kill. Nice little pick there on the solo.
It's going to make it hard for Variety over there, because that's two kind of matchup areas where his ultimate's not going to get a whole lot of value. Ducky can start channeling his ultimate right away for that CC immunity. He won't get pulled. And then we saw it from Sino, that dash away, but they're here and waiting for another gank. There's the stun. Variety doesn't have any CC immunity to get him out of it this time. The slows are compounding. The body blocks are here, and the rest of his team is not in position to get the Gold Fury in response.
No, they're not, but they will at least strip a purple buff out around that right-hand side. Well, great play from Obey, by the way. Don't forget, right, just TP'd to there, Finch. So he will lose a little bit more farm. He's going to lose the blue, and he should lose a whole wave, I would say, in the solo lane too. So put him at a further deficit than what Ducky's going to bring. So what we're seeing here now is Sino and Obey are adapting to the red buff invades. eUnited haven't slowed down there at all so far as they look at it now. But what can we see Obey now do? We're looking at Ducky. We're looking at Sino. Has Ducky's lead going to be more impactful as this game goes on? What can Ducky bring when we get to team fights?
Just a question of if that's going to continually be valuable for them enough, because there's not quite as much to be gained from right side control as there is from left side, because you're able to take that pressure towards gold and convert it potentially. There's obviously just more buffs over here to steal. It's a good answer. I just don't know that it's an even trade for Obey.
No, I can see your point there. Technically, yes, there's more farm on the left-hand side of the map. Yes, there's more players too. But sometimes if you can get a big enough lead in the solo lane where your solo laner can rotate effectively quicker and you are playing Sun Wukong, it does allow a bit more of a window. And granted, one thing I'm not mentioning yet, Ducky didn't even go for TP this game, and Variety's under pressure again, but he's got Snoopy here. The double bounce.
Stygian Torment brings two members back over towards the follow-up, so that is going to force eUnited to start looking for the retreat. This is the decoy here near Snoopy, so no trouble there, but they go for inbound instead. Immediately, he channels to the skies and is able to barely make it out of there. Nearby to try and get the kill was Hurrywin, but inbound lives through all of it to narrowly escape.
Yeah, too close for comfort there for Bobby, but he gets away in time. I personally am like, I don't know about that ult. I don't think that's going to save you because you're studying still after the circuit hits you. Circuit, when she uses a combo, she wants to get an auto attack off to proc all the damage that is really part of that kit. And that kind of sets her up for that. But honestly, inbound calculated to the letter in that situation there and survived and escapes a tricky situation.
Narrowly makes out of there, and they really needed him to. But look at this continued control of the duo side of the map for eUnited. They've been invading the red buff on cooldown, now the purple buff on cooldown. Guy J is ahead of Wowie. Snoopy is a little bit there even with inbound, so that one's pretty close, but it's a question of if Guy J's lead is going to be the same as what Ducky is developing over there in the solo lane, and which one of them are more impactful with their lead.
I think the key I'm seeing here is inbound is a little bit more effective at the moment than farming over Snoopy, which makes sense when he's on a Horus, right, compared to what Snoopy's doing, which is a frontline aggressor. He might be a little bit behind in terms of farm there, but it is also separating those two carries, more importantly, in that duo lane with the effective purple and red blades. It's putting pressure on Cupid because he's not getting as much farm on his own. Fields of Love, though, used on Snoopy.
To lock him down. They're going to put the from Sino there as well. They really want this kill onto the Hercules, and they're going to get it. Grasp of Death connects onto everyone, but how much does that matter? It's an earlier rotation over here from Ducky than it was from Variety, and that gives them a little bit of extra presence. They're going to defend the red and get the kill onto the Hercules.
They do get a tap on the left-hand side, though, eUnited, so that's a good deal for them, too, to keep the pressure rolling on Wowie. You can see the pings now going at him, because this pressure can continue. With Scream over here, Ducky just based, too, and I don't think he saw it in time. Wowie's under pressure, but Scream kind of took the moment a little bit too wide, in my opinion, to go for that pick there. Yeah, that little fight and that skirmish in the jungle. See the investment they put into Snoopy, though, Finch? Out there.
Heavy.
It was a lot of investment for that pick, and you saw a bit of diminishing returns come into play, too, on the tail end of some of those CCs. And that's going to be a little bit of a problem. They keep focusing on Snoopy as the game goes on. But at this stage, it's the right window to look at Snoopy. Look at the support player, even if it's a warrior or a guardian, in the first 10 levels, you will find picks. But it does cost a bit of investment as the time goes on, and you've got to change your targets.
And you don't want it to come at the expense of the carries. I mean, sure, they might have gotten, this kill into Snoopy, but Herwin has the lead over Wolfie. Guy has had the lead over Wowie all game long. They have been finding some response, but they might find themselves in trouble later if Guy J and Herwin are just able to put out more damage than they can answer.
Cheeky Gold Fury coming up here as well, because Obey don't really know what's going on. I don't think Inbound's the closest one to it, Finch. This is going to go down here, and this is really that tier 1 tower more than anything else separating it. That tier 1 going down and left was the reason that opened up.
It becomes so hard if you're the hunter on the left side of the map and you lose your tower early and your jungler has been leaning towards right. It doesn't feel safe for you if you're Wowie to step into any part of that jungle. So for sure, you can't know that the Gold Fury is going down. You really can't know anything. The only place you feel comfortable is near your tier 2 at that point.
Completely agree, and that's the hard thing. If you're that far back at a tier 2, how do you run through the jungle effectively to defend a Fury? Especially if you've not got much vision of people in front of you. They can hide around those corners. There's also a circuit with stealth, technically, that could be springing a trap there too. So with how this has played out so far, eUnited have a gold lead at the moment. This is still anyone's game, in my opinion. And I'm excited as this one goes on. Snoopy tried that blink play again. Love the idea, though. That's not easy to do, just to be clear. The speed he's doing that at is a tricky task.
It is, but Sino a little too seasoned, I think, to quite fall for that one. Does a little backstep and avoids the play from Snoopy, but I like that Snoopy's looking for those sort of high return plays that don't come with a ton of risk to potentially see if he can set up for eUnited to convert this lead into a bit more, because you're right, it's about a 3K gold lead. That is big for eUnited at the 12-minute mark, but it's certainly not back-breaking. Obey can still fight into it as Variety and Scream might be looking for a little bit of revenge on Ducky, who still has his ultimate and has inbound coming in soon.
Ducky's drawing a lot of attention to the right-hand side, but my real reason is, for what is the reason? Can we see Sino make something happen on the left-hand side while this is going on? If not, I feel like Ducky's getting a little bit risky, and the team's not making an effect off it, but Guy J may have just made a mistake there.
He is in some trouble, and Snoopy can't provide much peel. The driving strike does some work, but Wowie comes in to collect. Guy J hits almost enough shots, but Wowie, with that numbers advantage, it was a 3-on-2. They're able to get the better of eUnited on the left-hand side. Now there's some presence from Scream, but inbound has showed up. The ultimate is there, and that takes care of Snoopy. A 2-for-0 in left where Obey really needed some kills.
Oh, and the poison's going to take... I think he just died to purple buff in the jungle there, Finch, is what happened to poor old Sino.
Oh, no.
He still had the poison taken away on him, and I think he went for the camp. No one helped him, and he'll end up going down, so it ends up being a 2-for-2, I'd say, at the tail end. Yeah, Guy J's ult there was reactive, and I understand it, but I think that actually just put him in a worse spot than he should have been in. I think Snoopy did a really good job of trying to peel for his carry there in that situation, but then it was a quick rotation out of Obey that punishes them, and ends up, you know, working out the way it did.
Yeah, Sino's just there a little bit before Scream is, so that means that Guy in the 1v1 he thinks he has with Wowie ults too early and is instead kind of food for Sino, and there's not a lot Snoopy can do to peel Sino off in that situation when both Sino and Wowie represent a threat to kill him at such a low HP total. Not a lot Guy J can do to live there once he ults that early, and Obey have kept this game close. Both of these teams are absolutely in it, and Obey are the ones with this Cupid, with this Nemesis, and with inbound playing well in the Horus. They're in a pretty good spot despite being behind.
Funny enough, yeah, Horus 2 kills so far. I mean, it's not someone you really want to get kills on, realistically. You're not designed to try and do that, if I'm honest. But if they happen, a kill's a kill at the end of the day. It's someone removed from the map for a while and can make an impact. But yeah, I really like Horus on Bobby. I'm gonna keep saying it, but it's been good so far. I will say that last fight though, Finch, if Snoopy would have landed that excavation that he threw out, that ultimate that he did, I think that fight might have gone differently based off the health bars that Obey would have had. Good backstab.
Variety yet again, though, being ganked in solo. Sino has been insistent on trying to hunt down this Cerberus, but this time Variety plays it patiently, plays it calmly, and is able to get out of there without too much trouble. And the whole rest of eUnited were on their way to look for a punish, so I think Obey have done enough work to kind of put the fear into eUnited, but now eUnited are looking for the Pyromancer. I don't know if Obey are going to make it in time. The DPS is slow. Sino might make it in just enough time to get here to help, but eUnited secure the objective and make it out of there safe.
Inbound should be able to get away from this, unless the burst is more than expected, and there you have it. He did it earlier, but not that time. Obey were late there, and I'm surprised, but there's still a fight going on.
Putting the heart bomb onto Snoopy, but I don't think there's anything more that Obey can get out of this one. That is huge from Variety, surviving the pressure from Ducky and Sino, and the rest of eUnited there to help initially, but turning that rotation into a Pyromancer.
Finch, I mean, that Pyromancer too, when you look at the minimap, and this is the thing, we, as viewers and casters, we get an overhead view of the entire game. We have that advantage.
Way more information.
But the one key that they had there was Guy J was in mid lane. Why was Guy J in mid? Question mark. Where's the mid laner? Question mark. Where's the jungler? Question mark. Oh, wait, we just ganked solo lane and we're still not seeing any of them? What could be happening on the minimap right now? Pyromancer, because Gold Fury's down. And I don't think Obey recognized it in time there. So they kind of, you know, they got caught with their pants down and they were too late to that engagement. I think Obey should have recognized that a little bit earlier for my liking and could have stopped that from being as free as it was for eUnited.
This is a problem, though. eUnited can't get both of these objectives and have Variety live through that gank. The lead's going to explode out of control. Now they're up nearly to 5,000 at the 17-minute mark. I think the largest lead we've seen this early in the game for either of these teams so far in the set. They've got about a 3K experience lead to go along with it, too. We have been giving Obey a lot of credit this game, but eUnited, despite being down in the kills, have played the map better.
completely agree. And now they're looking for more at tier 1 and a fight in mid lane 2. Inbound's
And
not going to get his ultimate off the time at all. That's a tier 1 tower. And no sign of Obey being able to turn anything around unless Sido can make something happen here.
There's the Fields of Love. That should keep
That
them
was good.
overcommitted. Herwind falls early on, but he is Persephone. He can still put out damage to try and help from the grave. But if I'm eUnited, I want to get out of here with as little cost as possible. They were able to get all these objectives off the map, the tier 1 tower and a kill in the inbound. Just don't give up anything else on the back end.
And they're looking to try and siege down in the tower here, Obey. I like the idea behind it, knowing that Horrywind's dead. But realistically, the front line of eUnited just too strong there to really deal with. Take into account what we saw there, then overall, Horrywind died for a Pyromancer, a Gold Fury, and a tier 1 tower mid. I'd say that's worth.
I'm right there with you, especially when you factor in they also got the kill into inbound to slow him down a bit on this Horus, when we know how comfortable he's been feeling. So eUnited are certainly still in a strong position at this point in the game, but I'm a little bit worried because I still don't feel like we've seen the big combo that's going to translate into the late game for eUnited. What is their strategy going to be when they group up for the 5-on-5s? They're going to need big damage from Herwind and Guy if they're going to make this work.
Agreed, but I think they've got a bit of a better threat on the front line this game compared to last game, Finch. They've got 3 blinks as well, is a big key here. Where he's got buy time. Oh, we could end. Oh, I thought he was going to pull him out of it. That would have been so good. I would have been so hyped.
It looked like he
did,
but
did it,
I think maybe the dash got Wowie back in.
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
Narrowly able to get back into it. They did get Wowie's beads though, Hindu, which I think is still pretty worth considering that eUnited didn't spend much of anything there, so it's still in a good spot.
Yeah, going back to my point though, I think eUnited got a better comp because they've got 3 different engages on the front line. You got a Blink initiation for variety, he could force beads. Scream forces breeds and forces people to look towards him. And Snoopy again, Blink driving strike like we've seen him try and do a couple of times. I think their threat of engage is really good. And not only that, defensively and offensively, Persephone is a pain in the backside to deal with overall.
Yeah.
Like she can just set up shop and really clear waves from distance and be able to cause issues with that grasp of death too.
And you know what this kind of reminds me of, the way that eUnited has played this? It's kind of like old Epsilon or Energy in that they didn't really help Variety at all. That was Demi's lot in life back then for the solo lane. They didn't help him at all, and they trusted him to not really lose the lane that much. And Variety's done a great job of it. Now, we'll get to see, with him not too far behind Ducky, how does he rotate over into these team fights and then have that presence for them as a late-game solo Cerberus with a lot of control and decent damage. They're going to need him to play well, too.
And that's a good point. I think for viewers at home as well and fans of the game, right? Sometimes you'll play solo lane and you're like, why is my jungle not ganking for me? Give up, you know, sometimes they're going to give up on you. They have to because the rest of the map they might be winning on, right? If you're going to be in a losing match, do your best to farm and stay alive as long as possible. It ain't your fault at the end of the day. That's what happens in Smite. You will get left on an island. It's why solo lane gets called solo island sometimes, because you won't see a lot of people. But also, if you're not going to win the matchup, give up the pressure and just farm and play safe as you can. And I think Variety's doing an okay job at that. I do think that, honestly, Ducky's doing a good job so far in this lane, but I want to see Ducky starting to transfer out of this lane now. I don't care about losing that tier 1 tower. It's not that important. Let's start seeing you trying to rotate the map and cause problems for the Persephone, maybe. Let's not try and allow her to set up shop around some of these areas. And with the escapability, I think Ducky needs to start to look to do that a little bit, but he's got to need support to do it realistically.
Yeah, I feel almost the opposite. I think Ducky hasn't done enough with all the pressure he's gotten over there from Sino. I think he should be further ahead, or they should have more control on the right-hand side. Whereas instead, Variety stayed close, and eUnited got way ahead elsewhere on the map. This Pyromancer could be a pretty big deal, though, as eUnited start to pull it. Another neutral objective going their way adds even more to their lead over Obey.
Oh, he got
Obey
it!
able to steal it, though. That was Ducky with the Jingu Bang, with the cudgel, stripping it away.
Cast a curse there for you, Finch. She said, I don't think it's done enough yet. Jingu bang, baby!
There it is.
What?
They needed him.
Ducky earned it. That's all it was. That was a nice little individual play you saw him trying to do it at Fire Giant again. But Obey are the objectives. I don't know why they're not wanting to skirmish or contest a little bit more. I'm not sure whether it's their ward placements they're struggling with and getting wards down in the right areas, or they're not feeling confident in their opposition to just walk into that sort of team fight area. If that's the case, then you've got to ward better, you've got to ward a little bit deeper so you can see those situations arising and adapt to the situation. Pressure a different lane, you know? Look for the tier 1 tower in left or something if you don't want to fight. But at some point, you're going to have to take a fight.
United need this because their lead is starting to shrink. If this was closer to 4,000 or 5,000, I'd be feeling confident.
Right?
But This Gold Fury could extend it. You're right, he is not going to be there to help, and that is the Gold Fury in favor of eUnited, and we're right back up to about 4,000. Not backbreaking, but it's enough of an advantage to where eUnited can feel comfortable starting these fights.
Yeah, it's a little bit weird, that, because obviously they get the Pyro, maybe Obey in the head, like, okay, cool, we got the Pyro, so give them Gold Fury, let's not contest that one. But at the same time, like, nobody was in the area of that Gold Fury at all, and we had 2 members of Obey over there before eUnited had even shown their face. So it's a bit of a surprise there, and you know they're not going to go for it when Horus is in the right-hand lane on his own, just farming up a little bit. That's why I was like, why is Bobby there? I guess they really don't care about that Fury.
And when I talk about this left side control Hindu, I'm talking about those red buff invades. I'm talking about the 3-0 in Fury control for eUnited. They have run the left side of the map here so far, and now they're in position to start getting defensive around the Fire Giant. Scream is way up there aggressively looking for a loop around. Snoopy narrowly avoids what could have been a dangerous situation and does not spread out that heart bomb damage, but eUnited got to get set up for this play around the FG.
Yeah, United a bit confident now. If they get a couple of objectives really uncontested, or like one objective in the Pyro stolen, I like the idea of United going, okay, you want to fight FG then? Because you won't fight anywhere else. Maybe if we pull this, you'll fight. If you don't, you're going to hope for a Jingu bag again. But look at this flank!
GuyJ! That's Ducky and Sino trying to loop around the back. They get GuyJ's beads without a heavy commit. That means now Bobby can look for him, and he gets the knockup onto 3 members, but there's the Stygian Torment to slow the aggression way in the back of the fight. Scream has been left alone. Hurwin falls as well. Obey has sprung the trap shut onto eUnited. Guy will fall as well for a double kill for Wolfie. It's Obey who break open the Fire Giant fight and absolutely dominate it.
No ultimates available as well for Variety and Snoopy here. Tricky task for them to get in and defend this. Great play though from Ducky and Sino. That flank around the back, eUnited got caught, and I'm really surprised by it. Poor old Guy J didn't have time to really do anything in that. As soon as the beads wear off, by the way, Bobby's blink in was the bigger part of that too. The follow-up from Bobby really set that up for that to be an Obey win. They get FG, they could look for a Phoenix. I mean, they're down for another 15 seconds. Okay, tier 2s are probably the safer option. I think they could look for a Phoenix, though. I really do think
but
they can do it.
I mean, that Phoenix positioning from eUnited, I don't like that at all. If you're the ones in control of the neutral there, you've got to do a better job of making sure that they're just not walking up to GuyJ for free there, right? I mean, it's not enough control for them in terms of the vision around it at all.
Yeah, and that's the key. They just didn't have a ward in that area behind them. They didn't realize they pushed down that wave because the minion pressure they had there. That's the situation of the map awareness and like knowing what's going on. Because sometimes you can flank around the back a little bit here or there. Obey, though, a bit surprisingly, just took that tier 2 and then back up. I guess with the respawns are a little bit concerned. They did use a lot of relics there. Aegises are available for Wolfie and Wowie, but I think they definitely do want those beads up and available before they want to take a fight. And I think that's why eUnited is stepping up here a little bit more through the jungle. Just push out the lanes, buy a bit of time, waste off some of this FG buff.
Impressive, though, what Obey were able to do in that fight just now. And now comes the big time, right, where they have to convert this Fire Giant fight, an excellent fight from them, into a significant lead, into map control, into burning down these towers and make it life easier for them to get to Phoenixes, putting them into a spot where they don't need to be perfect like they were just now in a team fight to win, because they can rely a little bit on their lead. That's what this time of the game is about for Obey now, lowering the execution threshold for actually closing out this win.
Do want to keep an eye on Torrewin's build as well. Got Nemean online now, hiding Nemean Lion. Got a couple of changes this year, and I expect to see more of this as the season goes on. There's been a lot of talk about maybe some carries picking it up, and as a defensive option against basic attack-focused gods. Cupid is pretty much on that part. Those auto attacks will be blocked, but not only that, Nemesis too. So just reducing some of that damage output. I mean, if an auto hits you for 350, 400, right? If you can block that, you're going to live a little bit longer. And I like that idea from Hurrywin this game. A couple of auto attackers in this game, stay alive a little bit longer. You don't do damage if you're dead. Unless you're Persephone, I guess, which defeats the purpose, funny enough.
That's true. You never know if you want to kill the Persephone, but with that passive, the tier 2 in left comes down, tier 2 in mid still open. It looks like eUnited are completely giving up on them, only showing soft defenses. Scream heavily commits with the ultimate, doesn't get a whole lot there, as Sino makes it out, doesn't even use the relics, and now it might even have beaten in Variety a bit. eUnited make it out, though, it's not that much trouble, and they lose the tier 2 in mid, so now Obey have the Phoenixes completely exposed.
but I'm not sure why we're basing hi-rez Obey. Why did we fall back right now? Is it because of Pyro and Gold? I'm looking at relics. Nothing was used when Circuit used that ultimate. That's a threat not available from Scream now, you know? Don't have to worry so much about it. Why are we backing up there? We take a tier 2 tower, we've got FG, we're opening the window for eUnited to get back in the game. Why are we doing this? Unless it's a bait and a trap to start a fight, I'm fine with it, but I think they could have marched on a little bit deeper there.
Ducky and Sino again looking for these aggressive flanks. The rest of Obey are on the objective. Scream moves in, but he's less of a threat without having that ultimate available. Sino is low, but even lower is Variety. They get the first kill in this engagement in favor of Obey Alliance, and now United are stuck in an awful position, being forced to fully retreat as Obey continue to surge forward. Snoopy the one at the front line for them, but inbound blinks forward, gets the beads out from Herwin, and Guy J falls right away. Now Hurry stuck Ducky, gets the kill, and Obey have 5 members up with FG, and United only have 2. That might just be the game in favor of Obey. They might be getting their first set victory of the phase, shutting down eUnited. How can Scream and Snoopy find the defense here? It feels near impossible for them as moving on to the Titan go. Obey Titan down to half HP. Titan falling lower as Snoopy tries to keep them out, but they cannot do enough. It's Obey finding their very first win of phase 2.
Finch, I think the talk around Obey lately has been that those guys have had a lot to say, and I can understand it because they've been on a losing spree consistently. It was put up or shut up time today. Said it earlier, Rob.
Absolutely.
They put up. That's a big key. And now the community and everyone kind of gets to shut up for a second because they prove they can compete with some of these other teams. eUnited, on the other hand, sure, they are losing. And I know that wasn't a great performance from them overall. They're going to be frustrated. There is a little bit of a caveat for them. They've had a role change there. We gave the same credit to Obey in phase 1, 2 of the role change that they made. It's going to take a bit of work-up time. But I'm really proud of what Obey did in that game. I'm not a big fan of the back away, if I'm honest, but it paid off for them in the long run. It brought eUnited out, and that allowed them to take a fight in the jungle on their own terms.
Yeah, but for me, this is all eUnited on that Fire Giant. You have got to make sure that they cannot just walk up to your hunters in the background or you're not controlling the neutral. To me, that's entirely eUnited at that one Fire Giant fight, giving up a 3-for-0 for free. That's got to be cleaned up from them when they're playing around the Fire Giant, but you got to give credit to Obey for capitalizing on it correctly. That's going to do it for this set, though. Obey find the 2-1 win, and they're on the board. Get over there to the desk, have them break it down from here.
Thank you, Finch and Hindu. Indeed, Obey Alliance do it. They find the win column here in phase number 2. In Gormizer, I think a lot of people probably not super stoked about the way that drafting phase went for them, and they repeat the Wukong Soul that really struggled in game number 1, but you saw it from the get-go, man. You were saying you liked their draft, and it really paid off for them.
I think at the end of the day, it really does come down to those small little plays. Maybe not even the small little plays. It was exactly what Finch was highlighting, right? One big turnaround, one big mistake by eUnited that made it so much easier for Obey to get back into it. Because before that, you're not really seeing this composition come as much to fruition. Ducky was still just as clean as before. Wowie definitely showcasing he had a good day. The one that really turned around, I think, was Wolfie. The Soul in the first game really didn't do virtually anything. This time around, it was able to step up, and it was much more impactful. The same thing I think should be said for Inbound here. His Hercules, compared to this Horus, was abysmal. He was missing tons of abilities and things. This Horus definitely fit his style so much better, and it opened up so many doors and avenues for them that otherwise I don't think would have been opened.
Agreed. Inbound had a much better performance on the Horus in comparison to the Hercules that they had in game number 1. Wolfie certainly stepped up. I thought Ducky played really, really well in order to get them there. That Pyromancer steal to get some momentum back was pretty big. This is the fight, though, that Finch was talking about around this Fire Giant. I mean, this is a legitimate 3-4K lead coming in for eUnited, and they kind of just get split on that Fire Giant fight. Kind of an awkward engagement there for eUnited. And I feel like the way that eUnited's duo lane played today was significantly better. That was an area where they had really struggled. Gaijay was up 2 levels in this game, but just never really seemed to be able to make anything out of that lead.
Yeah, it was very unfortunate. I think Gaijay had a really, really solid, everything. Playstyle, unfortunately, like you said, it couldn't necessarily turn into anything for them. But hey, We mentioned it, and finally Obey get their win. So there's at least that, I think, going forward. And I do agree with what Hindu had said, which is, put up or shut up, community silence. But I think there's only a couple days, aggro, for that to lay in rest. Because now you've proven you're better than eUnited. That's, one step into it. But Knights, Renegades, they're just one tier, maybe slightly above that. And that's where I kind of want to see Obey start taking these games, taking these sets. Because that's going to be the difference between being bottom 2 and bottom 4, if that makes sense.
And remember, Obey was able to do it in Phase 1, so you know that they have that potential. Once they made that change over to Sino, they did go on that bit of a hot streak, so you know that this team has the potential to do that. It's just been few and far between for them in between those wins, but they're back in the win column finally. Overall, I think that both teams still have some things to work on coming out of this set, but you can only beat who's in front of you, and Obey Alliance certainly did that today. We've got their leader, Sino, standing by for an interview with John Finch.
Thanks, Aggro. And there's nothing here, man, but congratulations for Sino, the jungler that we have for Obey. At least for us, we thought this was a big set coming into it, Sino, where you all needed to be able to get this win here over United, and you're absolutely able to do it. What did this set mean for you all? Was there any extra importance onto it, or was this just another week for you guys?
For us, this is mainly just morale, I think we've been playing a lot better recently. But we've still been losing, obviously, which is tough. So it's nice to get a win.
Well, you all did get the win, but I think the way you got there might be more important. Wowie, Wolfie, and Inbound, to me, look the best that we've seen them all phase. And there's been a lot of talk from us about how they've been the inconsistent parts of this team. Did we finally get to see the Wolfie, Inbound, and Wowie that has been there all along?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, since I joined the team, everyone on this team has been improved so much, especially Bobby. I think he's improved like a ton. But yeah, obviously scrims have been going pretty well, so it's nice to actually do what we do in scrims and SBL and get some wins.
Well, talk to me about how you all were able to finally get things clicking and making it work, because for me, I felt like your struggles have always been the late game. You guys have gotten early game leads before, for sure, but it's been converting them, that was the problem. What was the big difference here in converting those early leads, and sometimes not even early leads, into wins this time?
I mean, for us mainly, it's just working on our team fights. Me and Ducky have tried to practice a lot on diving together, which I think went really well, and Wolfie and Wowie have played really well in living to the enemy dives and getting their damage off in every single team fight. So.
And you talked about your synergy with Ducky. That was certainly on display here. You all had a lot of pressure and variety, in particular in Game 3. Was that the game plan going in? Was that just what they gave you? When do you and Ducky sort of pull that trigger on getting pressure in the solo lane?
It definitely was not the game plan, but Howie died early that game, and then we just had zero pressure. They had mid pressure. We gave him Persephone, so we can't fight on Wowie because he's behind. So the only place we really could fight that game was solo. So I just had to go to solo and try to make something happen.
Hey, when there is no opening, you have to make one, and I think that's what you all did in that game. A great one from Obey. Congrats on that first dub. Hopefully, many more to come on the back of it. Thanks for taking some time for us. Wow, we got another big set coming up after this break. Sorry I called you Wowie. Sino here with me. Another big set after this break. We'll be right back.